Okay, we're into the takeaway. Everybody say hi, YouTube. My takeaway from last episode revolves mostly around how to get your players into a quest quickly. All right, takeaway time. My takeaway from last episode revolves mostly around how to get your players into a quest quickly. I think Matt broadly did a really good job of getting them on the right track towards this vestige much faster than he normally would have for like a standard other quest. I do think he could have been a bit faster, mostly in that he started them outside of the city. It did serve a purpose, that being that it introduced the attitudes of the peoples. That said, I think things really picked up inside the city. Matt offered what I would essentially call an exploration challenge. Big, wide city of brass. How are they going to narrow down where the vestige is? He gave them very little to go on, which I don't like as standard practice for how to like baseline DM when introducing a new location, but I do like it when it's embedded in an exploration challenge specifically being given to high level PCs. They have so many tools that not giving them anything is the base of the challenge itself. Now, that does risk them spinning their wheels a bit, which I think they did start to do. However, kudos to the players that while they didn't decide to do anything specific, they did give the DM things that they wanted to watch out for, which is, I think, is great. They're essentially like triggers that will stop any fast forwarding slash abstracting of the time that we're about to do and give the DM a lot to work with within that abstraction. It allows Matt to then just kind of set them on a walking sequence. They don't even have to be going anywhere specific, during which he can deliver more environmental storytelling, possibly give interruptions that they might want to react to, or at least interrupt the walking when one of their triggers pops. I think that's really important. And I think it's a solid way to handle quick city exploration from both the players and the DM here. If you don't know what to do, just set up things to watch out for. I think this still really plays into like the challenge angle of things. If the triggers that the PC set up are reasonable, clever, or insightful, then the DM can have them pop before anything bad happens. If they are lazy, too specific, or just going in the wrong direction, the DM can place obstacles in the path that come up before their triggers pop. I think Voxes were reasonable, but also a bit lazy and not particularly insightful, so Matt introduces a social challenge. Perfect. The challenge with the Ganassi and the Tiefling, which were the closest things that we're going to find to clear allies, the thing that Vox was looking for, and a simultaneous social challenge with the Ifriti is a really good result to the end of the exploration sequence. My only real complaint with it is that isolating the Ifriti in the alley extends the amount of time that our party was split. The players did a really good job of resolving and getting out of it quickly and reuniting the party before it took too long. And that meant, essentially, that the Ganassi and the Tiefling were the culmination of both an exploration and two social challenges. I'm not sure if Matt knew that that NPC was going to be a hit, or even if that NPC was pre-planned or not, but I think it was very wise to give this very distinct NPC ally as a reward for this. Like, even if this was improv, I think it's really good to invest creative resources into this NPC in particular. Not only does it like feel generally rewarding, but giving a guide is an amazing way to cut additional chaff that would normally be required on a quest that you don't necessarily care about how long it goes. You care about this one being short. In this situation, when I say guide, I specifically mean an NPC who has substantially more knowledge about a social or geographic region than the PCs. The Ganassi's not like a literal guide as a career. He's a jeweler, but he can act as a guide for the PCs when it comes to the City of Brass. This will feel especially rewarding to the players given their lack of knowledge, nearly just getting them into deep trouble a few minutes ago. They really need a guide. And now armed with one, Matt can easily justify fast-tracking them toward the real high points in this quest. Moving around challenges that might otherwise be required to keep the pre-established fiction like grounded, he can just skip straight past those since he has the guide. So, all said, I think everyone handled the exploration pretty well, and Matt chose a great reward for their success in that exploration. The exploration was done reasonably, but very quickly, and the reward itself will also lend towards getting through the rest of the quest even faster. And that's it! Takeaway over. Say bye, YouTube. All right. On Martyr. Wants. Because I think that something about, especially a really short quest like this, embedded within a larger campaign, this doesn't really apply for like one-shots, but for a short quest embedded within a larger campaign, there is something to be said for you can cut a lot of the normal questing by just having the people in the quest require favors out of them later. A la Senokir. Or this fire giant could also, request a favor from them after he gives them the information or what have you. Or he could just want to barter straight up right then and there for something else that they have. It could be something like the Titanstone Knuckles or the belt, like the Belt of Dwarven kind. He might want to do a little trade. Now, this does bring up a good point, though, as Jonathan Busby put up. How many debts is 2 made to offer your party on a small quest? I'd say 2. I would say, given all of that, even though it's a quick way to cut it, they do already owe Senokir. So I think that 2 can be okay, but it starts risking your party seeing through what you're doing, and I think it would probably only be a necessary touch, because they are going into this on a tighter timeline than I think Matt had originally intended them to be doing it on. Like, I would assume that he pictured this more like how Cabal's Ruin would have gone, or even Fenthras in the Feywild. I'm assuming when he prepped this quest, he assumed they would have not such a tight timeline in order to accomplish it. And so, if there is no other way, at least that you can find as the DM, to cut out some chaff, I think you could have, what is this fire giant, Waska? I think you could have Waska offer up another debt. And I think that 2 can work once you go past 2, and I think you should try to avoid 2. I think you should try to keep it to 1. I love a good debt. I love it. In D&D, I should say. Don't get into debt in real life if you can help it. But you definitely have to balance the amount that the party have at any given time, and especially the amount that they get in sequence. So, that being said, the fact that Waska seems pretty affable is kinda interesting. And I feel like my instincts here are, since I don't want him to already have a debt, but I also don't want it to be a Garmelie situation. I don't want it to be, hey, go and get me a tricorn hat from the Charcoal Palace, and then I'll tell you where the Dawn Martyr is. This is what I think you do. I think that Waska wants something in the same area as the Dawn Martyr. But he is big fire giant, man. He's too big, I think. And doesn't really know any, good non-slave mortals. Or, medium humanoids. And I think this is my prediction. This is my prediction that I also think would be a good way for this to go. And an explanation as to why Waska is so affable right now. I think that Waska doesn't necessarily want the Dawn Martyr, but he wants something in the same area as the Dawn Martyr. Maybe it's an ally that he wants them to release. I think more probable is I am going to predict that him and the other fire giants that sold out their kin, I think they have beef nowadays. I don't think they all retired as one big happy family. These 3 fire giants were just the ones willing to sell out their own kind. I don't think they're the best of friends. And I think that Waska either wants revenge on one of the other fire giants and or wants to get some leverage on them. So my thought is that the Dawn Martyr is currently in the establishment, fortress, home of one of the other fire giants. Waska knows a way in. In fact, he knows exactly where the Dawn Martyr is. He knows a back door to get into the establishment. But in fire giant terms, it's the size of like a sink, or like the size of a drain on a sink. But because fire giant, that sink hole is very big. Just big enough, in fact, for a small humanoid to fit inside of. And so I think that he is being affable right now because he's like, oh, they might be able to get in. And then if they get in, they can get their little trinket, whatever they want, and they can get me the leverage. Essentially, to wrap it all up, he's going to introduce an alternate objective that is not actually, and this is, I think, the big thing. I think it's not necessary to complete the quest. In fact, I think that it will be actively, substantially more difficult. I think, like, where they come into the fire giant's home, Dawnmar is going to be, like, right there. They could literally just go and escape. They could link hands, they could get out. But if they do that, obviously, they earn Waska's wrath. It is essentially the opposite of what's going on with Senokir. Senokir, they're great friends. He's helping him out. They'll have a debt later. Waska is essentially going to say, I'll give you the information now. You need to do this thing for me. In reality, they don't have to, unless they don't want to make an enemy. So now it is not securing friendship. It is preventing adversarialness. And again, it adds this alternate objective that I think is perfect, given Vox Machina's existing escape hatch, like panic button. Like, the fact that they can choose to end the quest anytime they want means that the moment they have Dawn Martyr, Matt does not need to worry about them escaping the place. Or, not that he doesn't have to worry about it, but oh man, Paige closed the door and then Bird came right back and opened it right back up. But yeah, so now Matt can basically make the alternate objective just difficult to get to. And he can even make it to where, like, you know, their escapes are closing off behind them. Like, once they commit to the alternate objective, they're, like, stuck in the house or some shit like that. Is it Bird or Velociraptor? They've learned how to open doors? No. But yeah, that's what I think we could introduce now. Is not a you owe me type of thing, but a you need to do this alternate objective, otherwise we have beef. And I think to put the icing on top, this is like, I'm thinking about this as we go. I think the best version of this is if the alternate objective is something that they just have to do in the place. Like, say, Waska gives them, like, poison to put in the rival fire giant's drink cupboard or some shit. Or it's like they need to find evidence and then, like, put it in, like, shove it out the window into, like, a dead drop or something that they just need to accomplish during the quest, but they don't actually have to go back and revisit Waska, so that you still allow the panic button to be the actual escape. I think that is the best version of this. And that way, it really, I think it's the best of all worlds because then it still keeps the pace going fast, right? They don't have to do a lot of convincing to Waska. He'll just provide the help. Hey, you need help? Here you go. And the alternate objective means that, like, worst case scenario, they have a fire giant enemy in the elemental plane of fire. Right now, not that big a deal. And really, kinda up to Matt on when/if he ever wants that to come back into play, which I think makes it perfect for this sort of really tight quest where if they hit the panic button before they complete the alternate objective, just because they want to wrap the entire thing up before Ashley has to leave, the threat is looming out there, but Matt can just choose to not bring it up again. And then you're chilling. And again, you kept this really nice, fast pace. Whereas, and you just, you consider it, oh, not the best ending, right? They got the not best ending. Whereas, if they have a lot of time left over where Ashley is still going to be here, they got through everything else really quick, they can go and do more fun stuff with Ashley. It's one of the reasons I think it's so smart and good of Travis to have brought up the panic button escape at the beginning. It is so freeing for all of them. They can just do as much fun stuff with Ashley as possible this session. And as long as they get the Dawn Martyr at some point, then they hit the panic button whenever they're done. It's great. So I think that's what, I don't know if that's exactly what will happen, but I think that if that happens, at least right now, that's one of the best ways forward I can think of for prioritizing speed at the table. Is it the best quest ever? No. But it's a really good quest, I think, that really prioritizes getting as much of it as fast as possible without too many looming consequences.
Something that holds great weight and many legends behind it.
Then I have probably made it.
Are you familiar with this?
I am not familiar with this. I did not make this armor, you ass.
I don't believe it is from this realm, but it resides here. It was won by a fire giant as yourself in a game of cards.
A game.
Or card games.
I may know who you would actually be seeking.
That would be phenomenal information.
This information that would lead you to this powerful, legendary, sought-after armor. Is it worth a lot to you?
Well, look, you shouldn't compare it to you or the things you've made, right?
Crosses his arms. You hear the clatter of metal bracers.
Yes.
He begins to walk over to the side. Grab something in the shadow, and you hear this scraping of heavy wood being dragged across stone. As he lifts up and slams in front of you, a table. A little bit larger height than you. You can look just above it, but it's a large table.
Then make your offer.
Hey, Sinecure.
Okay. I mean, I think that not random, but like generic bartering is less satisfying than what I pitched, but it's still fast, which I do like. And it is not resonant. It follows the pattern that was established with the Ifriti outside the gate. So there's an amount of like grounding the culture that I would think was good. And I don't think it's bad, but I don't really think it matters. Because we're not coming back to the City of Brass. Like, honestly, I would put this on the exact same level as mine. Actually, it would be better than mine if this was in Craghammer, like a place that existed near places that they often exist at, and that could be useful. Or has a high likelihood of being useful to them in the future. I think this would actually be better than mine. But I really doubt it will be. So driving home this like cultural beat, I think is weaker than what I suggested. It's certainly not bad, but this is driving home lore. It's reiterating existing lore and like really driving it home in our players' heads, which is not bad. if that lore leads to something later. And to be fair, to give Matt some credit here, he did say that Thordak made a relationship with the fire giants, and they crafted the modifications, I guess, to the Heartstone that allowed him to eventually turn it into the Ember Seed. So, fire giant lore, but this isn't specifically fire giant lore. I'm gonna give this a rating of weak, with an asterisk that it could become strong later, and I might just not know why. Like, I might not see all the puzzle pieces and how it will be back-referenced later. And if it does, I would put it up to strong. If this comes in later for Vox Machina, I'll call this strong. If it never does, I'm calling it weak.
I look at Wasp and I say, let me confer with my other masters. Hey, Sinecure, what's you want? What do you think is fair here?
Well, usually as a craftsman, they want something of their craft, perhaps.
A craft? They want...
Or you could always ask.
Yeah.
Yes.
In speaking with my fellow masters, we want to make sure we give you something that is fair and desired.
He reaches forward and kind of rummages through a small pouch that's affixed to the side of his belt. And as his fingers kind of dig around inside, you hear the clanging of heavy metal and various other objects slamming into each other as he pulls out some sort of strange small cylinder. He lifts it to his eye and peers through it.
Oh, he's looking to see what we got.
For servants, you all walk with many enchanted, desirable affections to yourselves.
I will also say, there might just be something. There might be like a DMing practical thing here. And separate, let's leave the story to the side for a second and like plot and all that. There's something to be said here. We heard Matt make mention last stream of DMs be warned. Don't give your casters something that ups their spell DC. It might also be that possibly recently Matt may have realized how powerful. And we've already gotten confirmation that magic items resize themselves to the wearers, so I think he could put on the Boots of Haste. It's possible that Matt wants a magic item tax here. And that is like a more practical, hey, as a DM running the game, you guys have too many magic items. That kind of leaves the story at the doorstep. You know, if you're trying to fix your game, you're trying to fix balance, there's something to be said for like sometimes the value of that warrants a tad bit of a weaker plot point in order to facilitate that kind of game balancing. Sam told Matt last episode he could break the handgun if he really wanted. It's true. I'm sure that Sam would be cool with it. I think Scanlan will give it over with his cold dead hands. Yeah, he'd give up the Dawn Martyr in a sec. Or not the Dawn Martyr, the fucking Myth Carver. Give that shit up in a second. But that could be. As, you know, I maintain my rating on how good it is in the story, the weak versus strong. But there is something to be said for outside of the story, just in games, there's a certain strength to this manner of bartering.
You are a very intelligent and observant man.
Puts a cylinder into the pouch.
Giant. Fire giant.
Offer me some of what you could give up. It will be yours.
Let me once again confer with my masters and enchanted servants. Okay, guys, what do we got?
I got a ring of lightning resistance.
Don't you have a lot of fucking weapons in your bag of holding?
Yeah, what's in the bag?
Normal weapon.
Anything good?
There's a great sword of frenzy.
That's pretty cool. Great sword frenzy.
Great sword frenzy, yeah.
That sounds not bad.
Whatever, yeah. And then you said a crosswing?
I've got a ring of lightning. My war mask. My war.
Oh,
I mean,
you brought
that
magical.
thing.
No, it's
It's
how.
crafted though.
Yeah, but it's for hideous. They didn't do it very well.
Ooh,
It's got my title on the inside.
magic.
Oh, maybe.
I would put it on Pinterest. Maybe it's a thimble. We can color it into handcrafted thimble.
Actually, it's pretty cool.
It did, yes.
How high is that?
Hey, you didn't have to lead for that, man.
Or
Hey,
what's that wing?
not getting the giant without some high rolls. I do. You can certainly try. I would love for you to try.
That's not from
I have a ring of protection +1 that no one's been using because it's just a ring of protection +1.
Resistance.
Ring of
I
lightning
have 2
resistance.
vestiges.
You want to try this greatsword of frenzy?
Yeah,
Another alchemy jug.
Awesome. You
Um,
get pennies out of that all the time.
and I have my magic necklace.
Never mind. I fully support. Matt needs to drive a hard bargain here. They need to offer like all their extra shit if they're. This is ludicrous.
It's super old stuff.
Let's offer him the
It's
sword.
worth
The heavy footsteps of an impatient.
All right, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take the sword
Yeah.
and the greatsword and the ring of.
But to bring it back to the story weakness and game weakness, I think this is both. A bartering sequence is always going to, I think, take longer than it is inherently worth. So I think you need to provide some extra worth, some extra justification. I think here, hey, fair enough. Let's bleed some of their items a little bit. Maybe not the best time to do it when you're on this tight timeline with, like, this tight IRL's timeline with Ashley, but, you know, not the best time, but not the worst time. So as long as they do this quick, which I think they are, they seemingly are very cognizant of the timeline, so I don't think they're going to take too long to do it. So I would say not the best time to do this, but also fuck them. They have so many magic items. Get rid of some of them.
Lightning resistance and put it on the table.
You don't mind?
Oh God, I'm
Son, we
so
didn't
crazy.
sell any.
$1
A big greatsword, put it on there, and then take the ring, place it up there with it. Both of his large, meaty fire giant hands grasp side of the table as he leans down and looks them over very intently. Takes the blade, kind of holds it in his hands.
This is a very good start.
Well, lucky you. I also happen to have this awesome magic choker +1.
Did you offer the fire giant?
I also offered him a tiny ring. Just gonna.
I feel like a little eyebrow piercing.
As you place it there, you kind of just glance at it for a second, and the little burning pupils of the giant look up towards you.
It was a strong start. Not a very strong follow-up.
As he leans back up, he says,
Wait.
He wants arms assault. This isn't what jewelry he wants.
Oh, we
he
want
wants-
arms, right?
Well, it's for ring of protection. That's cool. That was not weapons.
seems unmoved by the presentation of the ring. He says,
You are the dubious outsiders masquerading as servants, slaves sent to undermine the rule of the Grand Sultan of the Ifrit, the Lord of the Flames, the potent and incandescent, the tempering and eternal flame of truth, the most puissant of hunters, Marshal of the Order of the Fiery Heart, the smoldering dictator, the crimson firebrand, Maraki al-Sidan al-Harig ben al-Assad.
God bless you.
So, what is your final offer?
All right. We gotta. I tried to write that down for a second. That's gotta be a transcript copy. There's absolutely no shot of me writing all that down. Several time codes long. This is crazy. Undermine the rule of the Grand Sultan of Ifrit, Lord of the Flame, the potentate incandescent, the tempering and eternal flame of truth, the most pissant of hunters, the Marshal of Order of the Fiery Heart, the Smoldering Dictator, the Crimson Firebrand, Marek al-Sidan al-Harik ben Lazan. All right, there we go. It barely fits into my fucking notes now that the World Anvil thing is. Holy shit. That was 100% a Mega is Marisha moment. Look at her face to admit. Yes. Say it. I'm the note taker here. Give me a second. Ah, man. When it comes to note-taking, Mega really is Marisha. Behold the man with the truly long name, Percy be jealous. Look, this is what Percy gets when he fucking ascends to the next plane of existence.
Yeah, that was a man's name.
Okay, what if we give him some of the dragon scales?
We have some. What about the black sapphire?
I think I'm a flu.
I mean, we do have dragon scale. We have a fuck ton of dragon scale.
As
arms. He wants
wait, you can make a great craftsman such as yourself deserves only the fineness of materials. Dragon scales, dragon hide, white dragon hide.
One large hand raises up and begins to tug at the edge of his beard.
A lot of white dragon hide.
Bear milk.
There.
Leave it.
Just let it go.
Me, you're off.
Put it on the table, people.
Going like
He's a
like
giant.
40 pounds of white dragon.
Yeah, he needs a lot. It's gonna have his loincloth.
I will say also, in terms of the strengths and weaknesses of this point, a piece in the positive column is, especially in terms of the context of this being embedded within the short quest. I think that in reality, if I had to guess, Matt is probably already satisfied with their offer, but he can act like the guy isn't. And maybe the guy is also satisfied with it, but he's trying to haggle, you know. And it kind of doesn't matter what the players offer now, as long as there's some thought put into it and it makes sense. He's already drained them of quite a bit. And that is good in this quick sequence of, hey, make this broad, generic offer and have the guy react a few times to get them to put more and more on the table. And then once as a DM you are satisfied, you just say one final offer and let them put out whatever they put out, and then you accept it. It's like from the game side, it accomplishes all of like the resource draining that you might want in terms of the game, but it's also flexible enough that it kind of doesn't matter what they're putting up as long as you get to a point where you're satisfied. And that can take a pretty short period of like real. So it's a good, quick way to get through this. Again, I'm basing all of this on satisfactory ways to go fast. Going fast is one of my prime priorities right now if I'm Matt. And I think a lot of the things that he's doing are very suited to not getting dragged out and to going pretty quickly. Even in terms of a bartering sequence, I've watched Matt barter. This is on the faster side of some of Matt's bartering sequences. So I think he's doing a good job of kind of keeping the speed at the forefront.
That's going to be weird.
Can we do it like that?
Yeah.
So you're just been gently tanned for travel, and you go ahead and unveil and put a point.
Oh, well, that's the strength of it, Turtix. I think that's the strength, is that it seems like that. But they offered him some stuff, and he said, this is a good start. If they hadn't offered him anything good, he would have said, this is a very bad start. And then Matt was holding that whole name rant in his back pocket. So I think, like, there's a possibility of a fight. There's always a possibility of that sort of thing. But I think that Matt was repeatedly, we'll say, encouraging them away from a fight and gave them several updates as to the... he gave them several points of feedback about what was good and what was bad. Even on that last offer, he gave them the feedback of like, oh yeah, like, depending on how much you give, he's probably gonna like this. I think that if there hadn't been all of those moments of feedback, I absolutely agree. But I think that those moments of feedback and like the progression of the bartering cleverly disguised Matt coaxing them into the right answer. If Matt had just said, make your offer, the fire giant doesn't offer any amount of feedback. He's just like, make your offer. And then they put some stuff up there and he's like, is that your final offer? If he did the, is this your final answer bullshit, I would say that there's much more of a chance. But that was like a back and forth discussion where Matt could progressively nudge and push and coax them into the right answer. And when they started to get away from the right answer, that's when he brings out Mr. Big Name over here. And that nudges them away from the genuinely kicking off the fight. I think that is one of the, I think personally, that's one of the best examples of the magician that Matt is. I haven't talked about this in a while, but like the magic trick of making the world seem like big and like anything could happen. I think that's a good example of Matt's magic trick of like, I think that everything about how that conversation went encouraged Vox towards not fighting him, towards a end state where they didn't fight, while seeming as though, ooh, any wrong answer is gonna set it off. Like, that is the magic trick of like being a good DM in this case, is getting them towards the best answer for the story, while the entire time making them feel like they are one wrong answer away from everything crumbling around them. And that requires you to occasionally let them, make the wrong answer when it doesn't matter as much. But yeah, I think that's a good example of the magic trick, in my opinion, at least.
1, 2, 3,
That's clever.
4,
I
5
feel-
minutes later.
But it's better if
37.
it's one big piece as opposed to a bunch of tiny little pieces.
Well,
You managed to pull all that behind under the table.
Yeah, flourish. We flourish.
As you finish, Waska's mouth turns with this wide grin as his arm got scoop it all to his edge of the table.
Your respect will be remembered.
He takes the handfuls of it and the sword and puts the rings into the pouch, takes the sword and kind of jams it into his belt, takes the hide, and walks over to the side and opens this large chest, throws everything into the side of it, closes it, and begins.
Which, not to harp on this one point too much, but one of the good things about D&D is that unless you're recording it and putting it out as an actual play, or even just like, sharing it amongst each other, your players can't go back and rewatch it with a critical eye. You know what I'm saying? Your players can't go back and analyze it to see all of the little ways that you might have nudged them. So if you're really good at it, it's nearly impossible to recognize if you're really, really good at it, because they can never go back and look for it. It's all, in the moment. And so, yeah, like if you're really wanting to look at, I think one of the big strengths of Matt's DMing, where he makes the world feel big, he's really good at what I call the magic of DMing, the magic trick. I think this is a good example of it. And I think if you look for this sort of thing, that is one thing that you can really take out of Matt's DMing and really try to practice in your own DMing. I'm not as good at it as Matt is. Not even close, I would say. I think Matt's really, really good at it. And I think that was a moment. Yeah, cool. Killing a dragon ain't your everyday feat for most things. Wait, what? Oh, Dragonite must be a really valuable resource. I mean, I would imagine so, yeah. And I think that that's another interesting thing about this, and something that I do think is good to keep in mind for bartering sequences, is that all of these values are so relative, and especially placing this bartering on a different plane of existence with someone who has such an alien mindset could also inherently change the value of some of the things, which is definitely an interesting aspect, and just further solidifies the ambiguity of this. And high ambiguity moments are ones where, as long as the ambiguity makes sense, I think they are the most viable moments for the magic trick, if that makes sense. Right. And as a coder, I'm somewhat, I kind of like counting from 0 in a lot of cases. In terms of the floors on a building, it makes way more sense for me to start from 1. I also think that's one of the only things we do correctly. Because I think we should obviously be on metric. Being on Imperial is dumb. But this is one of the few things that I actually think is somewhat defensible.
So just your strength and your.
That's a 15.
Okay, so that's your strength bonus and your charisma. So 20. Yes. So you reach back. When you watch as his hand hits the section where the kind of engraved metal door is there, just kind of bends inward and leaves this big heavy dent in the front, and the impact is like a dull, thunderous clap of lightning. You hear it echo on the inside.
Oh,
It's engraved with something?
Some designer was putting it.
Wonderful. So, by the way, can I see that manhole cover you guys been carrying around this whole time?
oh yeah, sure.
Giant runes on it.
Here, can you help prop it up on that side?
You recognize it's giant. Cannot read.
This is very important script. It is that you must carry this at all times, and if you let go prematurely, you will die.
Better safe than sorry.
I will say I don't want to say I'm tuning out. I wouldn't say that, but I will say I think I'm a little bit I'm a little bit what would you say? I'm definitely not caring about the in between conversations as much. It's still fun from a just watching them have fun point of view. And I think this is perfectly fine and good for your players. But I felt way more tuned in during the Feywild. And I don't know. Yeah, I got to get some Subway Surfers in here, yeah. And it's I don't know. I'm trying to think about what it was about the Feywild that had me more tuned in. I think it might partially be that I know that we're here because of meta stuff. But I think that more accurately, I think like Singorn actually really grounded the Feywild for me a lot. And like we're learning so much, and normally it's like all of this lore shit, I'd be like salivating over. I'd be like, oh, the Nine Hells Embassy, but it's kind of like, well, it like so probably doesn't matter. Like, I find myself so tuned out at the normal environmental stuff that would normally have me very tuned in. Like, you know, learning about, I wrote down the ruler's name because I could see that coming back in, but it's like all of the districts and all of the stuff about the city of Brass. I'm kind of like, yeah, like, I don't know. It's probably not going to come up again. Whereas even with the Feywild, because I felt as though Singorn was not only going to affect the prime material plane, but was probably going to literally come back into the story, like physically. I cared about what was going on in Singorn because I thought that might come back. And then it gave an amount of grounding to everything else in the Feywild, because anything in the Feywild could affect Singorn. And because Singorn could affect other things, it was kind of this domino effect, you know what I'm saying? Of like making me care and engage with it. Whereas this, like, yeah, it's all fine, but yeah, I feel you, Jonathan, of like, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Like, I'm trying to, unfortunately, this is maybe where my experience is partially lacking in how good or bad this is. Like, as a viewer, I'm losing a bit of interest, but I don't know how good or bad this is for players. Because even though it's like, the things here aren't going to come back later, they still have to make decisions in the game, you know? So I think that I don't think that they're tuned out, probably. Because they still have like a goal. They have a quest that they need to accomplish. And yeah, they're probably not paying as much attention to like the global lore details, but they're still like very in the moment in a quest. So I don't think, again, this is I think my lack of playing experience coming in, but because I kind of have to guess here. But based on a guess, I don't think they're probably would tune out in the same way that I am. And I think a lot of the reason that I'm tuning out is because my preferences lean towards the DMing side of things. And this is something that, like, even as a DM, I wouldn't care as much about. But even my DMing tendencies would be to try and tie more stuff back to the main story, whereas this is like very isolated. But that's not a bad thing. Like, having isolated segments and moments isn't a bad thing. Sometimes it can be good to give your players a bit of rest. I think there's also an amount of putting them in a less full zone, or giving them a little bit of a respite from thinking about the grand plan. Like, I think there's value there. But it kind of feels like we've been doing that for a little bit. I think overall, I think this is probably fine in terms of the game. It's just like, as a viewer, I'm not into it. But that, in terms of this show, in terms of Critical Eyes, I'm only 10% viewing this, or like judging Critical Eyes for how it is as a viewing experience. I'm mostly judging it from the perspective of how it is as a game. And I think as a game, this is probably fine. I'm not that interested, but like, I don't think that's its fault at the moment. Make us a lot less ties, no family connections. Seems like we're just here for the quest. Yeah. As a DM, Mega tuned out the moment VM didn't bring some brown mold into the fire. I'm gone. I'm out. Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at last episode. The lore of the other planes doesn't really matter. Also, don't quote me on this, but I think a lot of the other planes are way more based on official WotC lore, so they don't fail. That's what I'm going into. It's like, even if I'm tuned out for it, is it good or bad in terms of the story? I think it's okay. In fact, there's an argument to be made that it might be good, given that this is sort of a bottle quest just for like while Ashley's here. So the disconnection might be even better just so that the players aren't smacked in the face with how weird it is that they've like abandoned the material plane during this like really important time. And it's not entirely irrelevant as a real creation. I don't know how much official lore Matt looked up, but I read some of his lore dumps as retelling someone else's work. Could be wrong. Yeah, I don't know how much of the like City of Brass and Elemental Plane of Fire, those are all like WotC, but I don't know exactly like how much of this exact stuff is his or not. They feel like the same world because they quite literally are from a different universe. They don't fell. Yeah. I think there's strengths and weaknesses. I think the possible disconnection has the strength of sort of masking the meta weirdness of them mostly doing this because Ashley's there. I think that disconnection is a strength towards masking that, and a strength because there is more flexibility in the stories that we can tell right now in other planes as opposed to the material plane. But in terms of weaknesses, I think it could feel a little bit jarring. And when there is so much going on in the other planes, I think it can make a lot of the stuff here a little bit of like small potatoes compared to what's going on in the material plane, which is, I think, something else that the Feywild had. I think this is all very comparable to the Feywild, and I find myself having liked the Feywild more, but I think that is mostly because of the back connections back to the material plane. Weirdly, I find this a lot more engaging than the Feywild. I think I can see that. But I was coming at it from a very different perspective, had seen C2 and 2/3 of C3 already. It's very interesting. And I think that the differences between the two of these are certainly interesting. And like, however you feel about it, if you're a DM about to run like an extra planar adventure, it'd be interesting to watch the Feywild arc and the City of Brass back to back, see which ones you like more, why. I think there's definitely like comparing the two could give you a lot of insight on how exactly you want to run your extra planar adventure. Like, I don't have any extra planar stuff prepped for Saltmarsh right now, but I can imagine if I did, I might go back and look at my notes for these sections, or even fucking like watch the entire sessions back just on like 2x. Because there's definitely a lot that is very different about the two arcs. Like, in a lot of ways. They're very different, but they're strangely pretty comparable. Yeah. I just thought the City of Brass was a pretty cool place and was interesting in its own right. I think that's fair. I hate window shopping. That's how I'll start this off. I despise window shopping. I don't do it. I say window shopping in like every sense of the word. I don't like browse games without the intent to buy on Steam. I don't look at Amazon listings without the intent to buy. I don't like window shopping. And so I also like Paige loves like there's an Instagram account called like Zillow Gone Wild that Paige really likes. I don't really find it that engaging. I do not often engage with things that I think have very little chance of being completely irrelevant to my future at all. And I don't like just looking at, I don't derive a lot of enjoyment from just like looking at something, especially something that's like meant to be possessed. This isn't me saying I don't like museums. Museums and window shopping are different. You know what I'm saying? Because the things that you are window shopping for are meant to be bought and owned and possessed, whereas museum pieces are meant to be viewed. And so you're like experiencing the whole thing just by viewing. What's the point of this whole wish list tab? The point of wish listing, I'll tell you, for me, wish listing is for I want to buy this thing someday, but I can't afford it right now. If I get a raise, I will go onto the wish list and see what I want from there. Or if I get a gift card or something like that. That is what wish lists are for me. Wish lists are like, but like, I don't like look at my wish list in the off time. So like, I'll add things to wish list of like too expensive right now. I like the Steam wish list because it emails you when there are sales. That's perfect for me because the reason I didn't buy it originally is because the price was too big. So if there's a sale, I might want to buy. But yeah, like museums are cool because their things are meant to be viewed, but shopping is for buying things. Oh, all that said, I also don't just like engage with D&D lore unless I'm planning on running it. Like when I'm learning about the Forgotten Realms or Eberron or something like that, it is because I'm either interested in it for potential ideas that I might utilize later. I am trying to determine if it is interesting enough to dive into just for its own sake. It's all determining if I'm going to engage with it more in the future. Because, like, Elder Scrolls, right? I played Skyrim. I liked Elder Scrolls and the Elder Scrolls lore just on its face. This sort of window shopping version of City of Brass, it would have to be like this sort of taster to me is valuable in encouraging me to potentially look into it separately. And in the context of a D&D game, like I would want to go back here if I found it that cool. But I don't. So to me, this is like an almost frustrating experience. I don't think there's a lot of justification for us to go back here later. I don't think there's a lot of justification to go back. So that's like a kind of actually frustrating experience for me. If I find it very cool but can't go back, it's preventing me from enjoying it more, if that makes sense. Like if I see a cool painting by an artist, I want to be able to like look into their stuff more. You know? I don't know how much sense this is all making. I don't know quite how to describe this, but I do hate window shopping, and this does feel like window shopping to me. Yeah. I don't know. It's very interesting, though. I don't know quite how to describe this factor of myself. It's a very confusing thing to verbalize, because a lot of the things I'm even saying, I'm like, well, that's not quite right. I don't know. They're pretty much mirrors, so they're easy to picture. The elemental planes are a thing somehow but foreign and never terribly fleshed out. I mean, it's not even that I struggle to picture it. Yeah, it's like even if I did find this interesting, that would almost be worse. So I don't know. The Feywild are episodes, but really disconnected and boring altogether. I think they're weird in context. I don't know that I find them necessarily boring. I love the Moonbrush episodes, but overall, I think they have a really weird place within the overall context. There's a strong argument against what I'm saying because I feel there's a meta reason that Matt wants them to go to the other planes. Mega has figured it out. I certainly, yeah. If there's a meta reason that Matt wants them to go there, I have no idea what it is. And like, I haven't even begun, yeah. Yo, Diamond and Marvel Rivals, let's go. Oh, Albie, we could queue together. Let's go. I'm almost GM. Dude, I don't know if I've said it. I don't think I said it on stream. I think I said it to my friends. But on console, one of my friends just hit GM and we're all pretty on our way. And I was like, I think it would be, what's the actual ladder look like? Marvel Rivals rank ladder. You're solo queuing? That's way harder. Solo queue is way harder. Yeah, so we just hit GM. Or I'm Diamond 1 about to hit GM. Eternity and then One Above All. So One Above All is top 500, right? I was talking about it. I was like, I think, because we ran into someone with a .ttv TV in their name, which is like, Twitch or whatever. And I made a comment about, I was like, oh man, guys, never let me put TTV in my name. I think that's very cringe. And then I was like, wait, lest I make it to top 500. Because if I am a top 500 person with TTV in my name, and they go in up and I'm a purely like D&D Critical Role streamer, have never even streamed an hour of Marvel Rivals, but I have TTV and I'm top 500, that's so funny to me. That's fucking hilarious. The thought of someone seeing me in top 500, going and looking at my Twitch channel, and it's all Critical Role. I think that's so fucking funny. So that's one of my goals this year, just because I think it would make a very, very funny joke. It's just a very funny situation. Huh? Mega is the brutalist. It's about the destination, not the journey. Sorry, I wouldn't say so. No, I'm a big fan of Journey before Destination. It's more that, how do I say it? If I'm on a path and I'm looking at two paths, I'm trying to look at the path that I would enjoy taking. So it's not so much about the destination. It's more about the is it a good journey for me? Will I like this journey? Evaluating. I don't like tasting a bunch of different things. That's not for me. I don't like that. If I find one thing that I like at a restaurant, I order that exact same thing every time I go. It's not because I know that I'll like it. In the end, it's because I don't want to take journeys that I won't enjoy. I guess it's like a fear thing? I don't know. But it's all like, in this context of the City of Brass, it's like you tantalizing me with a journey that I can't take, or that it would be weird if I took it. I think that's my big problem. Is like, in this case, if I was really excited about the City of Brass, about the Plane of Fire, I thought they were so sick, so dope. In my eyes, so far as a player, there's nothing really pointing me towards going back to the City of Brass later. Even if I loved the City of Brass, I would just be disappointed that I can't go back. I'm not about having one-off fun experiences. I'm about systems. I'm about repetition. Like, I love getting into things, into hobbies. I don't like testing out hobbies. So it's like, I will be incredibly disappointed if I go and try a new sport. Like, when I went and tried pickleball, and I could not see myself playing pickleball regularly, I was like, man, what a waste of time. But when I went and tried rock climbing, and I was like, I could see myself always wanting to do this and really enjoying the progress of getting better and learning it and getting into rock climbing social media, I was like, man, what a great time. What a great time. Even if I didn't actually have as much fun during the session, if I could picture myself having fun with it later and like progressing, then I was like, yes, big uppities. It's the same reason I don't really like, oh God, what is it? I don't like extraction shooters because I don't feel the progress. So it is about the journey for me. I just have like particular tastes on journey. And if the first taste, like my initial impression, does not indicate a good journey to me, or a journey that I'm even going to be able to take, not into it. Like eat a 7 out of 10 meal. Only 7 out of 10s for the rest of your life. Or would you rather have a 10 out of 10 meal 5 times? And then after those 5 times, you will be stuck with 5 out of 10 meals for the rest of your life? I think there's a pretty easy answer to that one. I think everyone's going to go with a 7 out of 10. But that's kind of how I think about the City of Brass. Is it's like, unless I'm going to be able to go back, if I can only have this a few times and I'm never going back, it's honestly worse if it's awesome. And so that's why I'm kind of tuning out, is just because 7 out of 10 in what cuisine? Does it matter? Interesting. I mean, I don't even rate food on a 10 scale. I rate food on a 3 scale. All food in existence is a 1, a 2, or a 3 to me. A 3 means I will not let it touch my lips. A 2 means if my in-laws made it for dinner at their house, I'm eating every single bite, but I wouldn't make it for myself. And then a 1 is I would make it for myself. I'd say about 10% of food are 1s, 10% are 3s, and about 80% of food in existence are 2s. So I don't even know if it's the best to go for that. Yeah. Meg, are you tank, DPS, or support in video games and D&D? Support! Support, then tank, then damage. Support. Support. Yeah, no, I love support. I'm a rocket main. Magic is my goat, then strange, and recently the thing. I'm rocket, and then rocket, and then rocket. I'm a bit of a rocket one trick. Wait, let me make sure that there's nothing crazy on my rivals tracker. Rivals tracker. Let me make sure there's nothing crazy on there, like, that would, like, give me away, but I don't think there is. Yeah, no, okay. I was worried that I had maybe used, like, an alternate name that maybe had my other name in it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, this is good. Yeah, I was actually wrong. I'm not Diamond 1, I'm Diamond 2. But this is my last month. And it's all rocket all day, baby. I play occasionally. Also a lot. I will point out my current win rate. This is in S1D2 though. This is in Eternal Falls Night. In season 1, oh, my win rate was also 80%. That's weird. But yeah, it's 23 wins, 8 losses on Rocket. It's all Rocket. And then a little bit of Thor, a little bit of Fantastic. Remember when I was like, I'm not a DPS main? This is fucking why. I am support and I am tank. And that's my website, tracker.gg. Tracker.gg gives you a lot of shit. But yeah. Pretty much. My impression so far is that the details are dead ends, and that kind of makes me tune out. Yes, I agree, Farrell. I think that's a succinct way to put it. I have not gotten indications that this is anything other than dead ends, and that makes me tune out. And that's a good way to put it. I love going with other people and getting bites of their food, but stay with my main in case I'm disappointed. I don't try foods unless they're good for me. If a food is good for me, then I'll try it. Like if it's like a new vegetable that I haven't had, then I'll try it. Because I'm trying to find more foods that are good for me. But like Paige makes like really tasty like snacks and treats and like pastries all the time. She's a really good baker. And unless it really matters to her, I will often turn down those foods. Because like in my head, I'm like, I don't really have a huge desire to try this. And if I like it, that's just one more bad thing on the menu for me. Yeah. The difference between City Brass and Feywild is the PCs traveled the Feywild and at a lot of very different locations. City Brass is more comparable to the Moonbrush, which there's something to be said. We had a conversation earlier that I think this kind of references well into of like crafting depth within the City of Brass is harder kind of than in the Feywild, but extraction shooters are all about progress, though. You retrieve resources at the base to upgrade yourself, go out again, repeat. Yes, but it's all fake progress to me. I think that's my real problem. Unless there are checkpoints that display my progress to me. So, like, I like MMO stuff, and, like, certain extraction shooters, it depends. I'm really not into, like, Tarkov, and I played a little bit of Deep Rock Galactic, and I like Deep Rock Galactic more. But, like, I like the MMO style of things. Or Destiny 2's, I don't think would be considered an extraction shooter. But I like Destiny 2 because it's endless, like, grinding and repetition that I do enjoy. But there are milestones of, like, the dungeons and the raids that allow me to feel that progress. So, like, the fact that it does have, like, milestones to allow me to feel the progress that I've made. I like Deep Rock Galactic because the core loop is just that fun. But I don't like Tarkov as much because I don't find the core loop that fun. That, like, I don't find the journey fun enough to, in my head, justify no destination. I like ones that have a little bit of a mix. Yeah. Your desire for going back to me speaks of a confidence in time availability that I think you have as a DM. As a player, most experiences in D&D are one chance. And that is fair. And that's why at the very start of this, I was really, you could hear me debating in my head of like, man, is this just a me thing? Like, is this a DM thing? Like, would I be thinking about this if I was, primarily a player? Would I be thinking about this if I was like really, really player minded? I don't know. And that's why at the beginning of this conversation, I put out there that this might be like one area in which I can't give truly good advice because this does seem like something that is very up to the more experienced player to evaluate. Because I agree. I think that I have a bit of a blind spot here when it comes to this, because I think I experience these sorts of things so differently from how a player experiences them. I have a lot of experience DMing and DMing in a lot of different settings and a lot of different ways and different systems at this point. But I don't have that same variety and magnitude of experience when it comes to playing. I have very limited enough experience where I feel like I can talk about it generally, but not where I can go super in depth. Like I feel like would be necessary here, personally. Yeah, one trick rocket, the rat one trick, yes sir, yes sir, rat one trick, and proud of, dude. I'll take my 65% on the rat any day in the world, any day of the week. Yeah. Anyways, to be fair, Reed ain't the best DPS out there. Nah, he ain't. Nah, he ain't. There's not enough time in life and games to be sad about not being able to go back to a D&D location later in some future visit, so I'm gonna enjoy it and assume it's a unique experience. If it's not gonna play in later, and truly, this might be why I don't like playing as much as I like DMing, because to me, unrepeatable experiences have a much, much higher bar. Like experiences that don't build upon each other. I view one of the strengths of D&D is its ability to be so additive and for it to be bigger than the sum of its parts. I also think it's why, hey, dogs, calm down. All right, we'll have to address it. Ads are about to come up. But I think it's one of the reasons I like D&D so much is because it is so uniquely positioned to be more than the sum of its parts. And I think it's one of the reasons why one-shots are a pretty weak area of my DMing. What's up? You guys are learning my ways. Or at least learning my fallbacks. Yeah, it's good old foreshadowing danger. If there's a way that dimensional fireplane law could bind you like that, the DM should let you know before you bet all of your friends. Yeah, truly reading me like a book. Huh? At least I'm cohesive, I'm consistent. Like, I think that the Feywild, I won't even say it's slightly different. I mean, it is slightly different because there's like baked in like deals in the Feywild are different. But also, before they would have ever made like a more high importance deal, they were presented with the Garmelie deal, which, they didn't realize at the time that Garmelie was Artagan. And Matt, like, I think pretty flat out, I would have to go back and look at how much he foreshadowed it. But it's something that they were talking about long before they ever talked to Garmelie. And I think that Matt still mentioned the whole Feywild deal business before they actually made the deal. I think they did. I don't remember, actually. Maybe not. It feels like a trust the GM situation, but if the game is hardcore, I don't know. This is like a TPK that hinges on one player. I'm trying to think of exactly how to say this. I find it difficult to believe that if the game is hardcore enough, that is a real legitimate situation, that the players wouldn't have brought it up already. Like, I think if the game is hardcore enough to where that sort of TPK would be acceptable, the players are playing way differently up to this point. Or they're asking about that. Like, oh, do I know about, like, binding deals in the fireplane or blah, blah. Like, I guess I'll put it that way. If the game is that hardcore, then that is a failure on the players to not check ahead of time. If the game is that hardcore and that is an understanding at the table of you need to ask about that sort of thing, then that's on them for not asking ahead of time. I won't even say it's necessarily on them for making the deal, but they should have asked, yeah. If the game is hardcore, wouldn't have there been a session 0 about it? Yeah. And that's kind of what I'm saying. Is it's like, okay, like putting myself in a situation where, let's go more to the Feywild where that's like more of an established thing. But let's say none of the players know that that's like a thing in the Feywild, whatever. And you might get into a situation where you make a deal in the Feywild and the DM is not going to tell you about the magical Feywild deal making. At that point, if that's the sort of game that we're in, and that was addressed and in session 0, and that's how we've been playing the entire time, then that is on the PCs for not asking. And every more minor thing that would happen before that is the foreshadowing of danger. Yeah, honestly. Yeah, if it was that hardcore, you just don't go to those planes unless you are forced to. And if you're forced to, you're doing a lot of research ahead of time. Yeah. So, like, I think it's, like, not a invalid point by any stretch. But I do think it's kind of a... If the game was that hardcore, so much would be different about this situation. So if it happened in this game, which I would claim this game is not that hardcore, based on all the evidence that we have from before now, then I think that would be a bad decision on Matt's part. It's either the game is hardcore, and then this is on the players, or it's not that hardcore, and it's on the DM, if that happens. Yeah. What I've seen learning from Megan SGM is that tables need to have a lot more setting and rule and constant and consent discussions more. Maybe. I mean, I'm a big fan of talking about things. There's no way, dude. But no, man, I feel like that's one of the things that, like, I feel like has made, like, me and Paige's relationship so successful is we talk constantly. We talk constantly about, like, relationship stuff. Like, I don't even think we really fight. I'm trying to think of the last time that we had a fight. I could count the number of true, like, what I would call fights on, like, these two hands over this 6-year relationship. But we have what I would call, like, hard discussions all the time. We just talk. We talk things, some might say, to death. But yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of constant communication. I would rather over-communicate than under-communicate. That's, like, just a heuristic for me. And it's not always the right answer, but I find that in my life, in most situations, like, it's an expected value. I find that there's more expected value in over-communication than under. It's not always the right answer, but I find that it's the right answer more times than not. And so it's like, yeah, I talk to my players every single session about how that session went, my DMing, any sort of rules calls that I made, and we are always open to changing things. I'm open to changing some of the ways that I DM. They're open to changing ways that they play. So we talk, we chat. I guess my issue with this is that either the game is too risky and near TPK is on the table, or we are trusting the GM to let us fight our way out no matter what. Either way, it feels like it breaks my immersion. I mean, maybe you're trusting the GM more than I am. I am fully leaving on the table that they might not get the Dawn Martyr, the Vestige. They might just straight up fail this quest. Because they don't need it. Like, this is a purely optional thing. So, like, my issue is that it's either too risky and a near TPK, or we're trusting the GM to let us fight our way out no matter what. I think with everything that has been shown, I would trust Matt. I think I should trust Matt enough that there will be enough time to link hands and hit the panic button. That's what I'm trusting. So I'm not, to be very clear, I'm not trusting that they could fight and win this combat. In all reality, I think it's like a 50-50 is my current evaluation, that they could actually take this fight. The other side of that 50% is them just failing the quest. At least at my table. I don't know. Such a dramatic risk calls too much attention to the metagame pretense of D&D. Yeah, I mean, if you assume that they need to be able to win this fight, then I agree. But otherwise, I don't know. I think not getting the vestige is fair, but having 6 stuck in the fire plane is not on the table. Yeah, I agree. Having 6 stuck in the fire plane isn't on the table. I also don't think that, like, Scanlan thinks it is. I guess I wouldn't say that it breaks my immersion, because, like, I don't think that Scanlan thinks that that's on the table. I don't think any of them think that's on the table. I see your trust. I see your trust. Yeah. But yeah, because I think that Matt has, in my mind, they've pre-found out how much support she has. They've already seen some of her guards. She personally looks very imposing. She has all of these magical items. She bleeds well. She fucking bleeds blue. And so in my head, like, if I was one of the PCs in terms of my own risk profile, I would never even think about fighting them. Maybe it's possible. I wouldn't put it past them at this level because they are very high level. And fire giants, I think, are like the 3rd strongest giant. It's like, what, stone? And then cloud? And then fire? Actually, it might be stone, fire, cloud. I don't know, actually. I don't know that much about giants, but I think that fire are on, like, the lower half in terms of power. So it's possible, but I think it would be tough, to say the least. So in my head, if I'm one of these PCs, I'm fucking grabbing the whisper earring and is like, if she fucking wins, we're all hitting the panic button, right? I'm in fiction, like, telling everyone we escape. If Scanlan loses this is the gamble. And then we just beat a hasty retreat, right? And, you know, we'd see what everyone else said. But yeah, this is a huge gamble. I will say that. It's a huge gamble. And this is the sort of thing that I would probably ask the other players about afterward and be like, hey, are you guys cool with that sort of huge gamble? Because it's basically like, I'm going to take this gamble, and if I fail, our quest is over. Like, failing or succeeding on the quest that they have all worked for is pretty pure in Scanlan's hands currently. And that is a lot of power and, like, narrative power to place on one PC. I think it's a little bit less standout if you have less players. You know, if you have 3 players, that's where shit happens all the time, even 4. But with this many players, that is quite a bit to put on just Scanlan's play and his actions. So afterward, I think that's a very reasonable. I mean, it's sort of related. It's kind of similar to the Percy stabbing Raishan moment. I think that Critical Role, just from evidence of what we have seen, obviously we can never know what's in their heads, but they seem to be cool with that. They seem to be cool with, like, one person making this sort of big bet or big decision. They seem to be down with that. I wouldn't be so down with it personally at my personal tables. I think it's a little too. I wouldn't personally be down with it, but I don't think it's invalid, and they seem to be down with it. So if this sort of thing happened at my table, even if Scanlan won, after the session, in that post-session discussion that we have, I would be like, hey, you know, that was a big risk. Congratulations that it paid off. Are you guys cool with, like, in the future, one person taking on that much? Because like I said, I think it seems like Critical Role is. But I don't know that I would personally be. If I was playing at the table, I don't know about that. Yeah, this could also just be a me thing because sometimes I have trouble reading how literally I should take RP scenarios. That's fair. I also have trouble with that. Storm is strongest. I think you guys are right. Yeah, strongest. Oh, then Cloud. Yeah, one person can tank a quest, but it would suck for a single person to tank the campaign. Yeah, I would never want an entire campaign to rest on one person, ever. One quest, especially a quest this size, if one person tanks, like, I would honestly say that tanking their relationship with Raishan, I think is a bigger risk. Like, I think that what Taliesin / Percy did is more risky and like more standout than this, even though aesthetically this looks a lot more risky. But I think that Percy / Talison's decision had much more wide-reaching implications. And like probably will be a higher implication moment all in all, you know? But I think this is very table dependent. And I think that cool with it. If Scanlan wins right now, would that be a satisfying mini arc conclusion to you? It's a good question. I'll have to see. I don't know. Probably not. Probably not, is what I would say. I would say probably not. But I also don't think it's that satisfying of a mini arc in the first place. When we're talking about my ranking of satisfaction, I'm not going to say it would be a ending. I've been using some terms recently that I kind of like. I would say it would be a weak ending. Not necessarily bad, but I would say it would be pretty weak in terms of satisfaction. Can get no satisfaction. Yeah. CR definitely feels stressed about it, but they seem to be accepting of it. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good plan. I think I would call it weak as a resolution, but I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I think there's been a lot of good DMing on display and generally good playing on display during this mini arc, but I find the whole setup of it to be just pretty uninteresting to me. So it's hard to say. It's hard to compare hypotheticals on it. Yeah. You remember with the first fire giant how I was talking about how well Matt hid the magic trick? I think the second one was a little bit of a... I don't think the magic trick was so magic. I think you can kind of see behind the mirror. I don't know, man. Killing a pit fiend isn't exactly a here's your free armor thing, so it makes sense. What makes sense? Killing a pit fiend isn't exactly a here's your free armor. They're still getting the armor for free, no? Wait, am I confused? Also, how hard is a pit fiend, actually? I think it's, like, pretty doable. Unless it has a bunch of shit. I mean, 20. If they isolate, bro, that's, like, not that bad. No ads. No ads, no ads. I mean, it doesn't feel cheap. I guess it depends. I don't know. It depends on what bro has in his entourage. Because, like, just a CR20 at this point, yeah, I don't know. Having the opportunity at all is what feels cheap. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I agree with you. If that was just like a 1-for-1 trade that she just offered instead of the gambling, then that would be reasonable. That would be pretty reasonable. But them even, her just being like, hey, you know all that gambling that we just did? Whatever, forget about it. See, though, this is why I wouldn't do it, lol. It calls too much attention to the metagame aspects. I mean, if you then offer the quest, I would not have offered them this quest. Like, the thing that calls attention to the meta aspect of it, like, in my table, they just don't get the Dawn Martyr. They just don't get it. I would have offered them that quest for their freedom, but not including the Dawn Martyr with it. They failed. They took a risk and it did not pay off. No Dawn Martyr for them. That's it. I don't know if that's harsh, but no. They're doing this if they want to stay on the fire plane and not be slaves. Or they could just leave. But no. She orders them to do this quest as her new slaves. And actually, doesn't even give them their freedom. No, they're just her slaves now. That's it. And they can choose to ignore that fact because they're level 19. Or they're not level 19. They're like level 16 or 17. They can just choose to leave. But as far as she's concerned, they're her slaves. And she's given them this quest as her new slaves. And if they're like, hey, we actually have this important thing back on the material plane, she's like, no, you don't. They're her slaves now. Maybe they can buy out their freedom, but also they're her slaves. She just takes all of their stuff. Their stuff is her stuff now. Nah, dude. They just leave the fire plane, man. That's it. I don't know. If Vox Monitor were only winning their freedom by fighting the Fiend, why wouldn't they just leave? They should. That should be the result of all of this, is like, hey, maybe you don't instantly die because now she thinks you're her slave, but like, you've kind of just lost the Dawn Martyr, unless you kill her. Now it is a situation of you kill her or you don't get the Dawn Martyr. Because you're her slaves now. That was the offer. That was the deal. That's crazy. That's crazy. I mean, maybe I'm more willing to let my players fail quests. I don't know. Crazy, though. Yeah, rich people don't stay rich by giving out. It is funny that they could just leave at any point. And also, the thing that I was originally like, is that 2 days? They're going to stay at the Fireblade for 2 days. While all that shit was happening back at the material plane? No. Even for the Dawn Martyr. Get back to Thortak. What are we talking about here? I mean, personally, crazy to me if this was even going to be the original offer. To me, this is a non-starter. You want me to wait 2 days? To me, this is saying you have to go and kill him in the embassy, which is basically impossible. 2 days is crazy, dude. I don't know, man. I think Mad Delivery was steering toward this when Percy wanted to cast Minor Illusion and she instantly snuffed it out with no roll. And she brushed aside. I mean, it should have gotten snuffed out. No, I agree. No roll needed. It's a spell. It has a, I mean, unless you're a illusion wizard can cast Minor Illusion with no, or unless you're a subtle spell sorcerer. But like, this is why Illusion Wizard has the feature that it does in 5.5. It's for exactly this sort of situation. But Percy shouldn't have been able to cast that without her noticing. No way. No shot. Are they just verbal, also somatic? Minor illusion. Minor illusion. Somatic. So yeah, she would be able to see him doing it. And like, it should be very obvious, I think. Yeah. See, Megan, now you're with me, lol. They're just slaves, and that's a lot of hassle. I wouldn't even say it's hassle. They just lose. They lost. They failed. That's it. Sometimes you fail your quests. You don't always win. So I don't think it's a hassle. I think it is, damn, you failed, and now you can't go to the plane of fire anymore. Sorry. Without dealing with this. Because again, they could just deal with this. They could just assassinate Wodena. That's it. That is not off the table here. Yeah, I don't know. Somatic. Cool takes. Maybe they changed it in 5.5? What I'm looking at right here is somatic. Matt has played loose with this plenty of times, but here he's like, nah, it's raw time. To defend Matt on this very specific point, the idea of spells being very visually obvious has come up multiple times this session. So I think twice before now. So I will defend Matt on that very specific point. Is in this session, he has established that spells that have somatic or verbal, that is the consequence of it. It's a hassle because Matt isn't following through with the logical consequences. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what you guys are saying, but I mean, I agree that he isn't. I agree that this is not logical in most ways. But I don't know. Okay, let's say they lose and go back home. Is it good entertainment? Now they get to fight a pit fiend? Debatable. I mean, and maybe there's something to be said for the actual play of it all. I personally think yes. I think the game is overall more satisfying and more entertaining if, like, you guys have heard me talk. I'm a huge defender of fudging. I'm not out here being like, I'm not a super like hardcore DM, but this is one where it's like they took a risk and it did not pay off. And they have a way. They could just kill her. Like, that's not off the table in any shape or form. So I'm kind of just like, yeah, they lose. They can try other options or they can leave. And I think that overall, when your game has those sorts of stakes, it makes the victories more compelling and satisfying, is what I would claim. Because this is, if we want to talk about fudging, just let's fucking talk about it. I don't care if Matt has never fudged a die roll. I don't give a shit. This is fudging. If your players could detect the die roll, they can detect, this is the equivalent of bad fudging to me because it removes stakes to me. This is as bad as if he changed a die roll and it was super obvious and they knew. Because it is just taking the consequences out of it to me. Yeah, I swear to God, I didn't know this was going to happen. This is exactly what I would have been afraid of as a player, but it's okay, yes, because Matt did give them a way out. It just breaks immersion a bit. Yeah, like I said, I think this is truly one of the best comparisons I can make to non-dice-based fudging. And why I claim so hard that they are the same. Because this is exactly the sort of feeling that I think that fudging elicits. Like the classical, dice fudging elicits. I think Sarah's point, losing the Dalmar and their freedom to a literal dice roll game with 50-50 odds. If it was an actual minigame quest to use their guess, that'd be a different thing. Yeah. IMO is more blatant and definite than Vorugal. Yeah, I so agree. I mean, I got people arguing with me in TikTok comments about Vorugal. I so agree. I fully recognize that my Vorugal take is debatable. I think my Vorugal take, super duper debatable. Totally. This one is, to me, is just in your face fudging. Because I can't grasp any reason that not only would she give them their freedom, but also the Dawn Martyr plate. I truly cannot wrap my mind around that. One or the other, maybe. But I also will say, again, the 2-day timeline, unless they are presented with a very clear way around it, I think is bad. The 2-day timeline's crazy right now. So it's like, to me, this quest seems built to be turned down. Like, it seems ludicrous on its face. It makes me feel like it's a trap. I don't think it is, though. I think it's just weird. I really don't want to. I'm hearing my grandmother in my head saying, now, Jack, if you don't have anything good to say, you shouldn't say anything at all. This ending and, everything to do with the Jurizel. What's her name? Not Jurizel. Whatever her name is. Everything to do with her. The moment they stepped into the house, I think is some of the worst critical role since the Underdark. And I don't want to make people that like this City of Brass arc feel attacked. I think it's super valid. I have seen, up until then, tons of things to like about it. I think that the City of Brass does seem very cool. And I don't even want to make you feel too bad if you, defend this. But I don't think I've disliked a segment of DMing more since the Underdark than that segment right there. I feel very negatively. Your grandmother talks like Thumper from... My first reaction is, I don't know. She's been dead so long, I remember her voice. But it's so sad. Yeah. But I couldn't think of another response. Oh, chat broke. No. Where? Oh, no. I agree about the 2-day timeline. Thordak kill every day they spend trying to get a +2 armor. Oh, man. Sorry for the downer. Oh, but crazy. Oh, man. No, you misunderstand what Hanover said. Oh, chat broke me. Not chat broke, Mega. I see. Yeah. To look at it from a different perspective. I love it. Let's get positive. This was supposed to be a Pike mini arc. They went to the fire plane because Ashley is back. She barely did anything so far. Yeah, man. And that doesn't make me think better of it. I praised so much of the early part of this because of how fast it went and how quickly they were going to get to the good shit. And then the pot at the end of that rushed rainbow was this. Broken by chat. You can have a negative opinion about other people's tastes, that's fine. I am always aware of the power imbalance here. I don't want to call my chatters fucking dumbass idiots, you know? Which I'm not, obviously. I'm putting so many, like, caveats on it and shit. What are you doing here? Yo, hey. But, yeah. You want to jump up? Okay. Yeah, we're about to get off stream. We're just talking to everyone. Yeah, man. But I will say that I do think better stuff in this arc is yet to come. I believe it. I mean, Critical Role has gotten so much better over the time of me watching it than anything that was in the Underdark. So I think this is probably just a weird moment. It's a confluence of the strange constraints that they're under. There are so many things about everything here that are built upon constraints that I would not have at my table. So it's hard for me to look at it and be like so negative on it, because in my head, I'm like, well, if they didn't have those constraints either, I don't think this bad thing would have ever happened. I don't think it's really an indictment on Matt's DMing, other than maybe he's not great with dealing with constraints and like restraining his game to fit constraints. It seems like he wants to have the normal CR experience while also accepting all of the meta constraints that are being placed on it currently. And I think that that can sometimes work, but might sometimes result in this sort of thing. And that's certainly a lesson. I will say, I also know that, to me personally, I'm also bad at this. It's one of the reasons that I'm not good at one-shots. Because I am not good at constraining my style of game to work in a one-shot. So I get it. That's why I said this wouldn't happen at my table. I would never put myself in a position for this to happen, because I know my game would be worse. I think you did pretty well with what he had. His first half of this quest I loved. I really, really liked, but what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? It really doesn't tell. For what it's worth, I think it's good and fine to have criticism or even talk shit respectively, because you do clearly straight the show and are well in the trenches of watching it. Yeah, I was way more nervous about it during the Underdark. Like, if I watched the Underdark nowadays, I would probably be way more ruthless to it. But at that point, I was such an outsider that I really didn't want to be, like, too, like, but because, you know, that was like talking shit on something I wasn't really a part of. At this point, you know, yeah, it's weird. I still find it kind of weird to think of myself as the Critical Role guy, but like, that's how I get introduced now. That's like when I tell people about my channel, I'm telling them about Critical Eyes more than anything. I'm a Critical Role guy. And so now it's like, yeah, I have like literal hundreds of videos, playlists. I have 132 about Critical Role, all ranging from like 3 to 10 hours. I've done my time. I can be honest about it. And I talk plenty about how much I like it. I do like it. Is it good? Watching 70 episodes or even 2 episodes enough to have the right to critique? Yeah. It's more just, it's kind of the tonal thing that we were talking about last session of like, the tone of something changes depending on context. And I think the tone of someone talking about how much they dislike an episode from someone who's watched 70 to someone who's watched 2, I think it's a very different tone. And I don't want to have the like outsider shitting on a thing that people like sort of tone. But at this point, I got to remind myself that I'm kind of an insider at this point. Yeah. Yeah. Imagine instead of moving on to C2 after you're done with C1, you just restart C1, but more ruthless. It's like, all right, let's run it back, everybody. We know Jericho bad. Oh, man, that'd be... Oh, man. And ultimately, moments like this are few and far between. It's bound to happen. Absolutely. They really are few and far between. I mean, even listen to the critique I gave of it. This is the worst since the Underdark. This is the worst moment, however bad you think it was. in 60 episodes. I think everything else has been better than this. It's not bad. There's a secret hidden compliment within there. Because I really do. I think this is probably the worst moment since The Underdark, but that's only to show how good the series has gotten, in my estimation. But with that, I think that'll be where I leave you guys. A good clock is broke twice every 70 hours. Yeah. I think we'll have Fantasy High this week. It's hard to tell. I'm not sure yet. If we don't, we'll probably have an Eyepatch on Saturday. Maybe the Screwjob. I really want Screwjob to come out sometime within a month. One of the next 4 Saturdays, I want the Screwjob. But I'm really focused on Dragon Week right now. Also, on Friday is going to be Outer Wilds finale. Outer Wilds finale. Me and Paige are going to stream until we beat it. So, Outer Wilds, Echoes of the Eye, I think on Friday. Probably starting late my time, probably like 1640 my time, Central Time. I'll put out a event at least a day ahead of time so that, you can notify yourself. But, so Outer Wilds Friday, video Saturday, and then we'll fit the episode Sunday. And tomorrow you will not see me. I will be grinding to Grandmaster in Marvel Rivals. But have you watched other stuff like Execute Calamity? Ooh, I can't wait for Calamity. I know that people already answered in chat, but yeah, we're going in release order. So this is the first any Critical Role that I've seen. What you see on the channel is what I have seen personally. And I can't fucking wait for Calamity. Because I don't actually know what it's about. Love that shit. And I know that it's considered one of the best Critical Role properties. So I'm psyched for Calamity when we get there. But I will say, probably not getting to Calamity probably until like 2026. We go slow, unfortunately. But with that, that's the schedule. I'll put out some events at least a little bit ahead of time so that you guys aren't surprised. And I'll see you in a little bit. Don't forget, use code MEGAPHONE for 51% off any yearly subscription to World Anvil. Thank you for World Anvil for sponsoring the channel, not just this stream. And I'll see you all later.
He's looking a little weird over it.
And when I cast Seeming, I also cast it on myself.
And Nazir, the flaming beard dwarf.
Yeah. I don't know if I can make flames.
All right, so as you guys walk out into the city, you are led by Uten in a similar path that led you towards not the Zenith Forge. It would be...
Dude, for spellcasters or in a high magic setting. Because I kind of mentioned, I'm like, in the first episode, make any deals you want, do whatever you want, doesn't matter because you're going to be fucking escaping the fire plane. And Senokir isn't saying, I'm going to lock you down with this. And they all have a good enough understanding of magic to probably believe him. But he's just saying so that I can find you later, which I love. I love. I generally, this is just broad, I don't want to necessarily lock down my players. I don't want to take him to jail. I don't want to contain him to a plane. I don't want to bind them by some manner of magical contract. I want them to have full ability and autonomy, partially for tonal reasons, but also, partially from like a creativity aspect. And again, just the majority of the time, 51%. I want them to have full autonomy. This is nice because it allows them to maintain that autonomy while also giving a very direct reason that Senokir can come back later. Whenever Matt chooses to have him come back later. And it's not even hidden. It's not like the Ripley gun, where they don't even know about it. They know that Senokir's watching. He might come back at any point and, potentially require payment. And I like that a lot, just as like a baseline thing. because it allows Matt a lot of flexibility as to when Senokir coming back would be the most narratively satisfying or conflicting, when it would cause the most drama, depending on what he's going to insist on. It also theoretically allows Senokir to send people to their location, basically them giving him voluntary access to a tracker on them. They're just saying like, yep, we will allow you to track us from now on. And that gives Matt a ton of freedom without restricting their freedom to bring Senokir back in and to require consequences. Like, they are essentially trading expediency in the moment for cool conflict later, which I think is great. You know what I'm saying? Like, they get a faster, more fun time now and fun drama in the future, which is just thumbs up on kind of both angles for me. Yeah. That sounds like fun for a certain type of campaign. Absolutely. A knowledge and a real knowledge is power sort of feel. Yeah, I agree. And I like this a lot more than some potential alternatives. That is, if VM absconded the deal. It does show the Senokir doesn't fully trust them to stay. It does, which is very fair of him, I would say. Yeah, it totally shows that Senokir doesn't fully trust them, which I think, frankly, grounds Senokir a lot more. He met them today. He shouldn't trust them. It makes him feel more real to me personally that he is requiring this and he's not just fully trusting the protagonists of the story. He is making an alliance with powerful people that he met for the first time. But he is going to require some guarantees on that, like this bauble. So, and he's not, he's not even requiring like collateral, right? He could. I think that is another option here, as opposed to like, full on trust or, this bauble to find them later. He could just require collateral, which is, adjacent to what the fire giant didn't require collateral. They just required a straight up trade. But in general, that sort of, I don't trust you, but I have no desire to find you later. So if you abscond on our deal, I'm just keeping the collateral that you gave me. In broad terms, I like the way that Matt is handling Senokir more, but also not everyone can be handled like Senokir. You need a mix of things, a mix of, giving them power to track you, giving them just trusting promises, giving collateral, having something up front. A big mix of all of these things. A mix of, you scratch my back, I scratch yours, but you're going to scratch my back first. Requiring a task ahead of time. Having a mix of all of these things, I do think is important within the campaign. The one that I tend to default towards, or maybe not even that I personally default towards, but that I like the most, is the Senokir one. I think it's the strongest, but there's also something to be said for the more you repeat one of these things, the less strong it becomes. It's like a balancing act of using all of them, but using the strongest one like the most. You know what I'm saying? Senokir works especially well for an ambiguous threat because he's so creepy. You can imagine all sorts of horrible things he might do. Absolutely, yeah. So I think this is really strong from the Senokir side of things. I think that making the fire giant, I would have preferred the fire giant to give them an optional objective and then have him be a looming threat. I think that that could have gone really well if the fire giant had just sort of given them the optional objective, and that was coupled with Senokir having a way to track them. Because then there's this theoretical situation where the fire giant uses Senokir to find them. That could be really fun. But in general, like balancing it with the bartering, with all this, I think the one that what you really have to consider is, how is this going to speed things up? Is this going to slow things down? And could this come back later, or am I requiring payment essentially now? The Garmelie situation slowed things down and required immediate payment. The Waska situation sped things up, but required immediate payment. The Senokir situation sped things up, but requires delayed payment. And the theoretical Waska situation that I was pitching sped things up, but required delayed payment. So there's a lot of these options that you have. Collateral is speeding things up, but immediate payment. It's almost the corollary to my theoretical Waska one. There's an axis here. There's an axis of options. I think that all of the things that we talked about can be put somewhere in this axis of timing and play speed versus delayed. And then I almost needed to draw out the square ahead of time. Well, we're here. And then we're going to go up or down. I think this is kind of the matrix of what we're talking about. And this is the matrix of NPC assistance, is what I would call this. The matrix of NPC assistance. So does it speed up the play speed? And we'll go payment timing. Payment timing. This is the matrix for stranger NPC assistance, right? Does it speed up play? Does it slow down play? Is the payment immediate or delayed? So something like Waska's, I put Waska in here. Waska's in here. Senokir is over here. Garmelie is down here. And then something that slowed down the speed of play, but the payment was also delayed. That's an interesting one. I don't know. I can't think of an example off the top of my head where the payment was delayed, but also it slowed down play. I'm even trying to think of like a theoretical one. I'll have to keep it in mind. There's like, this is kind of the most, oh wait, these are opposite. These are opposite, sorry. Senokir, the payment is delayed, and Waska, the payment was immediate. That's my bad, these were delayed. Or these were opposite. Waska, Senokir. This is like one of the most desirable corners for the players. Of like, Senokir is speeding up play right now, but they don't have to pay him until later. I think this is like one of the most classic corners of like, I need payment now. And then Garmelie is a classic one where there's very low trust involved, where they are saying, I'll help you, but I really don't trust you, so you're going to have to help me first. This is like very much our low trust quadrant. This is low trust, but also I'm really not even that interested in what you have to say. Like, Garmelie really valued what Vox had to offer, but also didn't trust them. Whereas Waska didn't trust them, but also didn't really care that much about them. So I think in terms of payment timing, the immediate is going to be the low trust half. And then it's a question of, in terms of play speed, how much do they even value what Vox has to offer, what the players have to offer? Whereas Senokir very much values what they have to offer, and like, at least to a degree, seems to trust that they won't abscond. Or at least, has a degree of trust in that. Underdark, where they had to get their prize before the Briarwood feast. Underdark versus Briarwood? Wait, what? Sean's deal against Thordak. Oh, yeah, if we consider Raishan to be a player. But no, Raishan is immediately paying for it. So that's the Garmelie deal. That's the Garmelie deal, because Raishan is being asked to provide immediate payment, essentially. If we reverse it into Thordak is essentially getting the immediate value, and the payment that they have to give Raishan is delayed. So that's in terms of the Raishan Thordak, depending on who you're looking at it from. For Thordak, it's over here. For Raishan, it's over here. It's tough because in this case, there's kind of no reason to be in here. Like, it's a bad deal for someone. Or it's a bad deal for both people in that case. I don't know. The reward was delayed, and it slowed down the session to where they couldn't fight the Briarwoods until the next app. The deal was made during the Underdark arc, but they didn't get rewarded until the Briarwood Feast. Wait, what? Crazy's talking about that deal that had Tiberius trying to go back to Craghammer to get payments. Oh, the deal that they made with the person in Craghammer about scalps from the Underdark. Yeah, that's a good example. No, not the Tiberius one. It was the minor deal? The one that Tiberius... Wait, no, I think you guys are talking about the same one. It's the one that they made with the guy that provided them access to the mines. I think you guys are talking about the same one. Later, after the arc, Tiberius was like, we need to go and get payment for that deal that we all made regarding the scalps. Yes. I think that is a good example. Yes. I think that is a good example because in the moment, it doesn't actually speed up play. It solves a problem, but it ultimately slows down play because it gets them past the door or the gate or what have you. It solves one singular obstacle, but broadly slows down play because now they have extra things that they have to do, but they also have like this extra thing that they have to go through in order to extract any sort of payment. So I agree. It is extra things that they have to consider. They have to actually like narrate like, oh, now we're scalping them. Also kind of weird. You know, we never really talked about that. Yeah. I agree. We'll call it Underdark. And I think that is a good thing to keep in mind is that sort of deal is, I think, best implemented when it involves something that they're already probably going to do, but is just like this extra reward, right? I do wonder if this is an opportunity potentially for Ashley, or if this is just slowing things down unnecessarily. And this is one of the tough things about not having Ashley around consistently, is not only do you have less data, I guess, to put it clinically, less evidence of what Ashley is into at the table. Like, what is going to make her excited? What is going to get her into the role play? And I don't think that everything needs to be focused around your guest players when they're there, unless the entire reason that you're on the quest is because of the guest player. At that point, I think it's okay to focus around them a little bit. And so, but this is like to give Matt some grace there. This is one of the things that you have to consider whether you're a DM that has a player that is just popping in and out, whether it's a more West Marches style thing, whatever. If it were me, which I haven't been in this situation, so I can't necessarily say what I would do, but I think I would try to take notes, like active notes. Like, for the other ones, I think I'm starting to, like, me and probably Matt much more so, is starting to catch the vibe of what they are into, but it's also an aspect of, like, keeping up on it and, like, being reminded of it constantly. That's why I say I would take notes, is because even if he knew back in the day, you know, back when they played once a month or whatever, you kind of form habits as a DM and you start to get like a cycle of like, okay, I need to include this. I want to include that. I'll kind of push this player to go and do something when this comes up, because you start to just get a rhythm of what makes your players excited. And if you have a player that's coming in and out of that, it's harder to like remember naturally. It's harder to intuit what they're going to be into and what they're going to be interested in. So I feel for Matt in that way. And if I were him, I think I would really try to like focus any potential encounters around Ashley. And all that wraps back to, I don't really see Ashley going for this. And so it's either like, I would include something if it's Ashley oriented. If it's not, I would try to not include it to keep things up. I found alignment helpful as a beginner D&D player because it gave me some markers on where I could go. I'm very rule following IRL, and I struggled a lot with breaking rules, even in a pretend world. I can see that. And that's why I say, like, if it's helpful for you, absolutely. I find it restrictive. And like, I think the thing that bothers me about how Matt goes with it is that it seems more restricted when it comes to like, you are this alignment, your choices are making your alignment shift. Because the alignment, like what a chaotic good even is so subjective that like, if the player came to me and said, I want to shift my alignment, more power to you. But I find it odd for the DM to control that. I find that bad. Even if you want to use alignment, I would still leave it fully in the hands of the players, even in the hands of the player. Matt probably does know what Ashley would be into. She was a part of the campaign for 2 years beforehand. It's probably hard when they are in the middle of shit. I would broadly agree if the shit that they're in the middle of was not for her. You know what I'm saying? I think that's the only thing with this specifically. Like when she joined for the Kevdak thing or for Vorugal, I'm absolutely with you there. But this, I feel like we're already kind of suspending so much disbelief otherwise. I would say focus it more on her, Liam and Laura decided to play twins because in real life they share a birthday. I didn't know that. No, I didn't know that. Has Ashley initiated anything while she's been here the past 2 sessions? She seems to content to just be at the table. Maybe. And I mean, we don't know what she is. And there's also like, is contentment the goal? I don't know. It's hard to say what she's into, but I will also say, I feel like I can speak on this specifically with more experience. Paige, I talked about Paige like in our current 3-person campaign. She does not initiate much at the table, but that is not because she does not want to. That is not because that is like her ideal end state. She does not initiate because she is afraid and nervous and or not particularly excited about what is currently happening. Like there's been a good bit of haggling last session, and she was like, I'm not really into haggling. Which is fair. Like, people aren't going to be into every part of the session. That's why I'm saying I would try to include more of what I think Ashley is into. But I don't think we can look at the outside of her not initiating and say that that is how she would like it to be. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I think the alignment was repentance for the broom incident. Yeah. I think it was. I don't like that, Ashley came across kind of like Travis, where she's just happy to be there, but I want her to do more. And again, it's like, with this table specifically, Matt has to balance so much that I feel for him. And that's why I don't often talk about like him targeting things towards Ashley. I definitely have talked about it in the past, but like I don't bring it up as much. But in this specific context, I feel like while they're on this Dawn Martyr quest, this is the time to do it. If there was any time, I feel like it's now. Of like, you can justify kind of really, targeting everything towards her, because the meta factor of this is all because she's at the table, I think the alignment shift was dumb and maybe only implemented because of the outsized outrage on Broomgate. Very possible. Very, very possible that it's reaction based. Yeah. I don't like it as a mechanical thing. I think that's very fair. I agree. Because like, even I don't use alignment. I use the MTG color pie. at my tables, and I really like the color pie, but I also never make it a mechanical thing. I'm never like, oh, they're red or they're blue, so you can't do this or you can do that. It's a character building question. Yeah. My impression of Ashley as Pike is a lot of growing pains with the show because she's there so rarely. And I think she found the mechanics confusing because the home game was a different system. Yeah, absolutely. Like, that's why I say I want to give Matt grace for this, because it would be hard, I think, to remember what she is into. But this is the one where I think the most active thought should have been given to it, and I haven't seen a lot of that. I haven't seen, it feels like to me, a lot of the things that I associate with Ashley, because I associate Ashley pretty similarly to Travis in terms of what they like. Maybe it's not, but I haven't seen a lot of that. So I don't know. It's a tough situation. The whole Ashley, it's just so tough. I've said it before, say it again. I'm excited for when she's not so in and out. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to, like, target things to Pike. I'd want to target things to Ashley. So, like, give opportunities for encounters that Ashley is into. And frankly, again, I'm basing it mostly on what I've seen of Travis. And what I would see there is, like, miniature combats. So I'm thinking, like, a bar fight or a scuffle in a market that they can help break up, even if they're fighting on the side of the law. That sort of stuff. That's where I see Ashley being more into it. But also, that's speculation on my part. Yeah. This might be more of the other players playing over Ashley. Maybe. It very well could be. I assume that Ashley would not be that into the encounter that was just presented, but it could be that I'm wrong and Laura just kind of talked over. It's just so hard to tell. I feel like I have a pretty good idea of what the other players are into. I'm guessing with Ashley, just because she's been here so little, which sucks. We don't actually know what Ashley's preferred balance is. We're making assumptions. Great distinction, focusing on Ashley, not Pike. Yeah, absolutely. Which that's like, whenever I talk about like positive or negative player targeting, I am specifically talking about player targeting. It is presenting situations not necessarily to a character, but to a player. So I think a decent example, I've never really had romance in my stories, like, or in my campaigns. If it's in there, it's light as hell. But in my most recent campaign, I know that Paige loves like flirty little romances, even if they don't go too deep. And I made one of the characters. I did not target him towards Paige's character specifically, but I made him a romancy little flirt. And he was kind of flirting with all of them. And then Paige's character, a little predictably, was the one that gave him the most feedback on that. And then I kind of dove into that. But I just made him a romancy flirt. I did not necessarily target him at Win, Paige's character. I just put him into the story because I thought that Paige would respond well to that, which she did. Yeah. Even though it's no longer an issue, it makes me hate Blind Spot for taking away Ashley. I'll never watch that goddamn show. Nah, I get that. I feel that. So yeah, I do think there is an important distinction there. And sometimes targeting the character is very good, but I tend to focus much, much less on targeting characters and much more on targeting players. Yeah. So you basically made a Gilmore? I made a young, fun apprentice prodigy that doesn't take himself too seriously. I made like an early 20s Gilmore. Now that you put it like that, and they run a smithy that, while it doesn't specialize in magic items, it does do them. Yeah. They reference CR in Blind Spot. That's funny. I think I normally think in terms of targeting the character. I mean, I definitely don't think that it's bad, especially if targeting a character can be good if you are trying to determine the effectiveness of the targeting, and targeting the player is good if you are thinking about the willingness for the character to even interact. Because, like, I'm thinking about like combat, right? For a combat, I think about, have any of the players been a little bit lackluster in combat? Have they not done very well? Or have they done exceptionally well? And I'm thinking about that in terms of the players. I'm not thinking about it in terms of like raw DPS that's been put out. I'm thinking about like comments that are made during it of like, man, I just can't roll well, or I can't do this. I'm thinking about those types of comments from the players. And then if I decide on a target, essentially, then I'm thinking about what is that player into? Are they into combat, or are they into more like social stuff? And then within that social situation or that combat situation, then I'm looking at the character for specific ways to target if I really, really want to. But a lot of times I just look at the first two layers, unless it's combat. Combat's the main one where I do have to think about the character a lot more because their specific tools matter a lot more. But yeah, I don't as often think about like character personality. I probably could more than I do, but my default is definitely thinking about player first. Favorite. So true. Early 20s, Gilmore right after abandoning his parents. Exactly. Both sides are probably useful in different cases. You just made me realize that I only ever consciously think about one half of it. Yeah, fair, very fair, very fair. To consciously consider both. I think my instinct is definitely the player, and it sounds like your instinct is the character, but I think I could probably think about the character's personality a little bit more. That might help, because I know that like one of the things that sometimes my players struggle with is playing their character through. You know what I'm saying? Some like my players have voiced that to me before of like, yeah, sometimes I'm struggling to really play my character. Too much of me is slipping into it. And to be very, fair and pertinent to this conversation, some of that could be on me. If I'm thinking too much about what the player enjoys and what the player likes, that could be steadily influencing them to, play to themselves more than their characters. So to be self-reflective and self-critical for a little bit, that instinct might not always serve the best. I think I am really good at giving them things that they're into, which I do think makes broadly good sessions, but it could have a little bit of impact on the roleplay. I don't want to downplay it too much. It could have an impact on, and I think that this, and I won't get too deep into it because we had this conversation kind of the first stream, but I truly do think that this is sort of part of the both strengths and weakness, but, the aspect of where they are. They aren't in a slaving market in Ank'Harel, right? I don't think slaves are illegal in Ank'Harel, but say they were, right? They aren't in a slaving market in, like, one part of the material plane where they can potentially have an impact. Like, to me, it's almost strange that they even bought the two slaves. It feels like, yeah, I think the alignment change is why it's brush past and she's chaotic good now. Yeah, but it's like, I think like broadly, the reason that they're kind of ignoring it is because if they delved too much into it, there's nothing that they can do about the current situation. Them buying these two slaves out of the hundreds, probably thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of others in the city of Brass and the surrounding area is kind of just pissing into the wind. All they have done, truly, and this sounds like pretty bad, but they have mostly had the impact of supporting the slave trade here. It's not even like they broke out two slaves. They just bought two random ones to be freed and given more money to a slaver to perpetuate the trade. Now, there's some argument to be made about they still made these two individuals' lives much better, and we can't know what the person is going to do with that later on down the line. But it's like, I think the reason that they are brushing past it is because if they don't, if they think about it for too long, it calls into question the morality of their entire situation. And I think, again, It may not surprise you to believe that I like it when the players think about things. I like thinking about things, but I like thinking about things and thinking about things deeper and encouraging my players to do so. And if my players find an apparent contradiction or something that they have to suspend their disbelief for, sometimes that's fine. You know, sometimes you just have to suspend it. But I like to tackle those things when I can. I want my players to have to suspend their disbelief the base amount that they have to suspend it for D&D as a whole. But then I like to, if I can, not have them do it further. And they don't necessarily have to suspend disbelief here, but it becomes difficult to have a broad moral conversation in a place where evil is so rooted into the fabric. You know what I'm saying? It becomes hard to have those conversations in the City of Brass. You can have those conversations in Ank'Harel or Iman or Whitestone. Harder to have them in the City of Brass, which is why I personally am not as big of a fan of these types of settings.
Firm. Scoldings, just in case. Scanner should be visible at all times.
We'll get through this.
I'll be right back.
Look at stand watch.
Go back to that little dark corner and pull out the scrying eye.
Okay. Pike,
You can have.
Just kidding.
Sister, do you want to do a walk around with the two boys and see if we can't attract some attention?
Sure.
We're splitting apart.
Not getting far.
Sure.
I'm going to take the two boys.
You be careful with them.
I'll be very careful with them. And I'm going to say, don't talk to anyone, don't look anyone in the eye, and don't answer any question without my permission.
And
Anything's
don't be
fine.
scared.
And I've got a plan. It should be interesting.
All right. As you guys begin to wander off with the two
Not too
boys,
far, but yes.
yeah, Keyleth, you hold Strikers in your hand, and as you focus, you see this flash of heat in your mind, and then darkness again. The spell has an effect.
Ah, he's not even here.
Or he's blocking it somehow.
No, I bet he's in the fucking 9 hells right now.
Getting some money to go to the slave market.
Just so you know, the Scry spell fails if they're not on your plane of existence or if they succeed their saving throw.
You can try again in
Together.
10 minutes.
I can try again.
So I'm going to look around for something interesting.
You begin to walk around. You hear the barking of various heavy-throated creatures. You come across this large, it looks almost like a wolf or a dog, but the face is a little less pronounced like a wolf and a little more humanoid in front, but it's still bestial and monstrous. The coat is gray and matted, and you can see these long fangs protruding. It barks and snarls, but every single time it reaches for the bars, and the bars themselves look like a flimsy wood. But as it tries to tear at them or bite, there's a spark of arcane energy, and it backs up and seems to recoil from the attack and begins to pace back and forth in this cage.
Try and discern who runs this establishment.
You also see behind that there are two more cages that contain these very large insect-like creatures that have very long bodies with multiple legs, looks like maybe a set of 8 or so legs, almost like an oversized praying mantis with giant pincers in the front, but they're currently just kind of collapsed on the ground within their cages and resting in the heat. You see an individual that appears to be a similar racial background as Senakir, but is older with this kind of red and graying goatee that comes to a very defined point in the chin, and is currently just sitting off of a wineskin and watching you.
Good master.
Hope all was well.
My sister and I have been sent by our owner to peruse the market for things that he might enjoy, and I have been asked to inquire upon the nature of what you are selling and your suggested price. Never making eye contact.
Very well. They have today only 2 on cakes for sale. The on cakes for 500 gold apiece. The bargeist, 8,000 gold.
My master is always interested in creatures of unusual disposition, and he will be excited to know what you have for sale. I thank you for your time.
Please go.
I bow, I back off properly.
Oh, okay. What are you feeding me in this cup?
As time progresses and you guys been wandering around, just one Scry again.
Whatever I can.
Dude, that's a classic mega line. Or not even mega. I guess Jack at a party downing jungle juice and then blaming the person that's hosting the party. Be like, what are you feeding me in this cup? Oh my god, you're a traitor of sin and debauchery, Glug. I love blaming the host for my actions. It's beautiful. Not legitimately, but it is one of my favorite bits to run in exactly that same sort of way. And then they're all like, just stop drinking. And I'm like, that's ridiculous.
Okay, it's still no success, unfortunately.
I'm making sure that the whole market knows that there's someone perusing and purchasing for unusual creatures, and making sure they see the weird twins and the two angelic. I'm making a show of it.
Right.
And I'm making a show of our non-chained obedience.
As it progresses, the actual twins, you notice far up the way to where the arches begin, you see a sight that you've been seeking this entire. You see a large, deep red entity begin strolling down the street with its burling, rippling, armored muscles, its giant red wings flared out behind it, its horned head and crest piercing the sky behind it, and its burning eyes and fanged jaw and mouth. moves forward with each step, and as it does, you begin to see the essence of the necklace that had been described previously dangling around his neck.
Preemptive Jenga. All right, we go back to the
Try-
sales area.
We're not going to hurry, or we're going to meander so that maybe we get seen.
He gets a glimpse.
All right.
Can I try something really quick? That's it. Get ready.
As you guys wait in the spot that you've chosen, the Kid Fiend, as you've rightfully designated at this point, begins walking through and slowly making its way through the crowd. As it glances around, you can see it strolling through a few bars and kind of just like running its claws across the sound of its claws across the bar. It just seems disinterested by many of the creatures that have passed by.
Should I do something?
I'll play a song like
Hot in the suitor. Hot.
Make a perform check.
20. Oh, great.
It begins to eventually cross paths through the alley where you guys are situated, and it kind of turns its head and looks down to you with your flame-and beard and fire-wreathed head, playing your song, and it is an imposing and frightening entity. Even just being in its presence, even if you play the best you can, you feel everything almost slowed down in its proximity as its sheer immensity passes you, leaving you in its shadow for a momentary bit of time. And in that moment, you feel the back of your neck stand on, and all the hairs kind of immediately come to full point. You feel cold and alone as it sends its eyes upon you, and then it moves its gaze beyond and continues walking.
I'm going to walk by with the slaves.
As you guys finish your meandering, as you walk by, it looks at the two boys that you've procured and slows.
I'll call out to Percy. It's no use. No one has enough money for our slaves. We should clean up and go home.
Of course, master.
So we tried so hard.
The Pit Fiend has turned about and is just standing there with his arms crossed, watching this transpire, maybe halfway up the block where you guys had set up. Its eyes narrow, the kind of a bright spark of yellow light that situates where its face is. It saunters up, no direction, looks over to where the rest of you are, and where the two...
Is he coming over? I'll summon the magnificent mansion door, and I'll say to the slaves, all right, it was worth a try, but we must pack it in for
As you're saying this,
Master.
the Pit Fiend puts a hand up, and its mouth doesn't move. But you hear a voice deep inside your head.
Oh, shit.
I have discourse to make with you, small one.
But of course, I am here to sell if you are here to buy.
I have interest, Sonny.
They are for sale for a good price.
I've already brought them into the mansion. I've already handed them off and said, put them very far downstairs. The servants are taking them down.
Okay, what's that?
We have already packed up for the day. If this is a serious business proposal, I can go in and fetch them.
And the creature kind of leans down towards you. It is a very presence itself, almost causing the air to vibrate around you. Though it is not the largest creature that you've faced.
But I do remember Senokir did say that specifically the Nine Hells people are more interested in like angelic blooded slaves. And so it does appear as though the ASMR slaves being there is specifically to be used as bait. It does, in retrospect, it does seem like that was pre-established. And I didn't think about it because they mostly took that as, okay, we can change our appearance, we can be illusory. But when they didn't become illusory, then Matt just put some ASMRs there. I'm not even thinking about the players. I'm thinking about Matt offering it. I'm saying, regardless of what Laura necessarily intended, I agree. I think Tal is thinking along those lines, but I'm starting to think that that is what Matt intended, specifically with making them ASMR rather than anything else. Which I said earlier that I wanted a more, direct solution, and this does appear to be Matt reacting to their verbal planning and making it possible, which is like everything about this, frankly, I think is good DMing. It's just weird. It's a little strange and a little bit like tilt your head at that it is revolving around using sentient yet unwilling and unwitting creatures as bait. Sapient. That's a little weird, but like if we take morality out of it, just in terms of like good DMing strategies, it actually does seem like Matt gave them a more direct route, which is what I wanted. In order, when they started talking about baiting the Pit Fiend into the mansion, he gave them a method and a methodology with which to do that, seemingly, or at least to grab the Pit Fiend's attention. And then when they neglected to transform themselves into angelic individuals, he gave them the tools with which to continue that plan. To progress further down, we are in this location. It is a Pit Fiend that is specifically in a slave market looking to buy slaves. Out of the options at your disposal as a DM, this is a natural one to pick if morality is discarded, and it does become, and like it doesn't seem like any of the players either have noticed or like thinking about it in this way. I think that this location does encourage a certain amorality. So I'll give it a good DMing strategy rating. Does go towards my overall thing about not loving City of Brass, but it is using the kids as bait, but they have been put in the mansion where the pit fiend can't get them, so it's not like they're in danger. I don't know, it's weird. It's all just a little odd. Like, it's just, it doesn't quite pass the sniff test, but like looking at it closer is like, maybe it's not that bad, but it still doesn't feel like it passes the sniff test, you know? So I don't know. I'm going to ignore the morality for kind of the rest of the time that we're in the City of Brass. I think that's just going to be better overall, just for the course of this stream. So ignoring the morality, I think it's solid DMing. I think it's going quick. It's listening to their plan, reacting to their plan in order to facilitate that quickness. So I'll give it good DMing from that perspective. The happy path of the plan doesn't end in them being hurt, but they're in danger if the plan has a single hitch. I'm gonna leave it there. Yeah.
There is something about its presence that is purely evil and a bastion of power across all elements of the cosmos. And as it leans forward, the voice once again pierces the center of your brain.
It would do well to bring them forth.
I cannot just communicate with them. Would you join me inside my shop? Is there, you will see many other fine
What
specimens.
is your prize?
Well, you haven't seen what I have to offer.
I have seen.
So you are not interested in the Naga, the Goristro, the other celestial beings, the orcs?
Make a deception check.
Come on, 31.
Perhaps in time. But now I seek the spear in your possession.
But I didn't hear one. I do not see any. If you please, and with due respect, I do not see any jewelry or fineries on your person. Can you afford such prices that I will quote you?
As you say this, the eyes narrow, it leans back.
Have you never done business in this city?
I'm afraid that I haven't. But if you are serious, and it seems that you are by the way that you are, not moving your mouth,
When you walking away from you,
would you like to come inside with me and see them for yourself? Could pro price up. 30,000 apiece.
slows its gait, keeps walking,
10,000.
and stops. Turns around and starts heading back towards you. The voice once again pierces, this time even more intense and more impressive, and the voice itself presses against your will, and you hear it say,
Your price is acceptable. Exempt my charges. I will take them.
But the female Osamiris is fighting back.
Well, put her. What? I'm so sorry, so I must go deal with this. If you will.
Will wait.
and just stays there across the road when it's crossed 10 feet from you.
I will be right back.
I know she is much more powerful than the boys, but we cannot control her.
Did she use the magic?
Oh,
Oh my god.
I would like you to make an assumption.
Mom,
You
come
make an
on.
assumption. You need to inspire.
Well, no.
Can I inspire myself?
No.
Can I after I know my role?
That's the part.
Well, then fucking yes, I'll inspire myself. That helps.
What's your roll?
1.
That's not available.
No.
Well, as you charge in and you watch as the creature staring at Scanlan or his persona talk to you, then charge to the doorway, the pit fiend kind of looks over to you.
Inside the mansion?
Yeah.
I run up to Grog and I say, cut me, cut my arms, cut me, right now.
Okay, I pick him up by the top of his head, and I do like a 1, 2, 3.
And while I'm outside, I
You
say,
run numbers.
outside.
The voice echoes through your head in a way that is genuinely the stuff of nightmares. You feel your will crack slightly at its presence. It says,
No.
So spit in your eyes.
Great. I'm gonna run out of the mansion. Oh my god, it's incredible, isn't it? She's so powerful. She cut me with her mind. Please, come with me. I will need help with this.
the voice says,
Your deception, inquiry. If there is no business to be had, I will let the embassy know, and you will not have business in this city ever again.
I slowly flex out my black wings, slowly, and lower them and take a step half covering you and say, "Or nor right, master, do you need my help?"
I think so. And I'll just say to the young man, all right, I'm sorry to play these games and haggle with prices. I will go fetch them immediately. And I'll go in the mansion and just yell, fucking
Then,
yo.
Do you want to set up a... Well, we're inside.
Yeah, no.
Do you want to set up a sneak attack?
it's too late. Because he's outside, dude. So is Vex.
I don't.
I'm
really-
it's the alleyway still.
I'm in the alleyway with them.
How are the twins and Boss Man here arranged in the alley or outside the door?
The doorway is in the alley. It's like right where the alley meets the street. Keyleth is behind the alley. The twins are on the sides of the doorway. So you guys are just along the sidewalk, if you will, of the street. Grog is inside, along with Scanlan and Percy and Pike.
What's our proximity to him?
It's about 15 feet from you guys. He's across the street. Now his arms crossed, keeping distance.
15 feet across the street?
Yeah.
I can go out with the 2 angels, get him to come over and look at them at least, and then you guys can pour out.
Yeah, you can bring him out in front of the house if you want to, and then we can.
The only thing
Are you gonna?
I packed this just in case.
Oh.
You want to be an angel?
No, I packed.
What does that do?
It could work.
It's an 8th level spell.
Can you
so
look like an angel?
Just fucking cast.
Bring a little.
Ooh, can you make yourself as the?
It's one of the angels.
No, I said there was a female.
Is my female ours?
So you're having this conversation over your earpiece?
Yes. We're in the. Oh,
We're-
she's
I'm not there. Sorry.
That's heavy.
I'm sorry.
Come on, give me the angels. I gotta go back out there.
Yeah, let's go.
Do you want me to try and make this guy stupid? It's an intelligence
Do
save,
whatever you
though.
can. All I'm doing is trying to get him to stay long enough for you guys to do it.
I'm going to. He's 15 feet away?
You're inside. Are you inside? The
No,
house?
I'm outside.
You're not in the alleyway.
Yeah, I'm in the alleyway. How many feet away am I from him?
Right now, about 35 feet.
Do you wear my present?
You don't know.
I'm going to kind of saunter further down the alleyway.
Okay. Chop.
Ooh, that's good. 21.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll exit the mansion too and start walking towards the elevator steps.
Okay. So wait, what's...
Yeah, this is one of the weird things about D&D. And not to brag on Blades in the Dark too much, but Blades in the Dark does, I think, handle this particular type of situation pretty well within its mechanics. Not only in terms of being able to flash back, because like a lot of their planning did not matter all too much when it, like, obviously their whole sextuplets bits did not matter, which, you know, that was just like them having fun, but like a lot of their planning just didn't end up mattering. And it would have been nice if they could have planned more specifically for how this Pit Fiend fight ended up going. The flashbacks in Blades in the Dark have a lot to assist there with that, as well as, and I think that this is something that I don't really think there's a good way to implement flashbacks into D&D purely because there's not a really good negative thing that you can do to the players that isn't health. Like, flashbacks in Blades cost stress. They stressed out the characters. And there's no good equivalent to that in D&D. Kind of exhaustion, but they don't even really serve the same purpose. However, the thing that I think is also really good about Blades that I think in stressful situations like this, I like to lean more on the Blades side of things for, is in Blades explicitly, all enemies and like all adversaries act in reaction to player actions. So there's no concept of like players doing things at the same time as enemies or players taking too long to do things, and so then the enemies do things in the meantime. There is just, what do the players do? You determine how successful that is, and part of that determination determines what the enemies do and how successful the enemies are. So I think that that would be that sort of concept is very useful here. And I actually think that Matt is giving them, I think that Matt doesn't always handle the in-fiction pacing of handling all of his players well. Sometimes enemies will be silent for too long. Sometimes the players will be doing a bunch of things while the enemies are just sitting there. And other times, like in the part 1 to this episode with the Ifrit, the enemies are doing a whole fuckload of things without the players really having a ton of autonomy to answer that. And I think more often, a good cadence, especially for out of combat stuff, especially if you don't want to go into initiative, is you just wait until the players take an action that would require some sort of roll. So like in this case, he made her do a stealth check. Then you update what the enemy is doing based on that. And until they do something, the enemies don't really update. But before then, the players can talk as much as they want. if that makes any sense. It's hard to illustrate exactly how it feels so different without you experiencing it, but it feels drastically different to what's happening now. Like, even as the words are coming out of my mouth trying to explain the difference, I'm like, oh, well, that sounds like what Matt is doing here. But in practice, it is different. One of the things that I have prepped for this summer is I want to do more BitD stuff just so that I can reference it back for you guys and so that you guys like can watch it to understand more of what I'm saying. But yeah, there's a certain cadence to Blades in the Dark that I think would be really helpful in this sort of high stress scenario. Yeah. And that I think would be very, very useful for them right now in this specific situation. Because again, the flashbacks, not implementable, I don't think. But that cadence of action-reaction is much more implementable. We flash back to planning on when we get the pit fiend to the door. I'll cast a spell. Oh, so, I mean, obviously this is partially a joke. But to be clear, if I've ever mentioned flashbacks before, flashbacks do not flashback into the heist. So there is essentially the equivalent of downtime. For those who have played BitD, I'm kind of misusing words, but I'm trying to communicate it to D&D players. There's basically the equivalent of downtime, and then there is the heist, or the scores, which are more real time, like what we would consider like normal D&D play. And when you are in the real time segment, when you flash back, you only flash back to before the beginning of the score. So you are flashing back to the prep and the planning for the score, not to a previous point within the score, only to things that could have been implied, if that makes sense. I did want to clarify that because I don't think I've ever actually clarified that point, that the heists and the scores don't become these like weird interlooping sort of like rewriting history things. A flashback doesn't rewrite history. It only enacts implied history that could have legitimately happened and will now have an impact on the score moving forward. But they're never rewriting things that happened in the score previously. There's no rewriting history in Blades. There's only establishing history that could have been possible with what we currently see, but that might have a different impact on things moving forward than if we never saw it. Shockingly, the Pitfiend was not a fan of entering the mysterious magical door. Who could have guessed? Yeah, that's... I'll have to do... I want to do a rules breakdown at some point because I think it would be good. But yeah, there's also like... I was also thinking about this with Marisha, specifically, of like... They're normally not a super big fan of... And then we cut back to when they execute. Is that not a bit too? The flashback was planning a tactic, and then we cut back to see if they execute the tactic, right? Not necessarily. So we flash back to the planning on when we get the pit fiend to the door. Oh no. So okay, I did misread your comment, but it is also different than that. It is not a communication thing. I'm now understanding what you meant. You're saying flashback to planning. In the planning, we set it up to where I'll do this thing when this thing happens, etc., etc. That is not how the flashback works either. The flashbacks are flashing back to things that you do and accomplish. That sort of thing, like that sort of communication, is pretty free on Blades. Blades doesn't worry too much about like over the table talking, and I will say in my D&D sessions, I don't worry too much about over the table talking. That's what I was about to talk about with Marisha here, is like they're worried of like, oh, I'm in here, I'm in there, don't tell me that. I don't worry too much about that at my tables. I think most of the reason that they're so concerned about it is the internet of it all. Being the internet is concerned about that sort of thing, I don't think it's super productive. But Bitty more works in such a way of like, I'll give a better example. Say that Matt narrated, if we ask like Matt, like, hey, how many guards are there around here? And he says, oh, within eyesight, there are 3 guards. And then you say to Matt, I want to flash back to pay off those guards before we get here. Which that could have happened, right? In the established fiction so far, even though none of the players have acknowledged it, the guards may or may not have been paid off. We don't. There's been nothing in the fiction to solidify that. So you flash back to attempting to pay off the guards and you play that out. You may or may not succeed in paying off the guards. Basically, the amount of stress that it costs, like the amount of cost that the flashback has, is determinant based on how complicated the thing that you're asking to do. So trying to bribe these 3 specific guards ahead of time, knowing that they're going to be here, that's pretty complicated. That might have a pretty high stress cost, but you can still do it. It just has this higher cost. And then you go into it and you actually play it out, and it may or may not work. So no, it's less of a communication and more of a accomplishing things during the planning. So like, I acquire these blueprints, or I cut a hole in the fence before the heist even starts. All of that sort of stuff. So it might be like, yeah, you get up to the location that you're trying to do the heist against, and you see a fence, and they say, can I flash back to have cut a hole in this fence before all of us got here? Like basically prep the fence. And, that may or may not work. So that's more of what flashbacks are. They're more about accomplishing things rather than communicating. Yeah, I think I read that you moved past the moment, but you were in the eyes moment. Yeah, that works. English and bit. I will say, it would work. It would just be not fully. How would I say it? That would be like a 0 stress thing. That would just like, again, that's like one of those things of like, you can just talk about that at the table. There's no restrictions kind of on there. So yeah, that's kind of how I would put it. In that case, it would be like a 0 stress flashback, I guess, if you want to put it that way. Or at least that's how I would run it at my table. Because that's like such a low complication thing. That's like so free that you might as well just do it. So it would have to be a pre-setup trap or something that they could have don't in the lead up to the heist. Yes, precisely. They would have to do in the lead up to the heist, I think is what you're saying. Yes, that is the primary thing that flashbacks are used for. To Daniel's point, you absolutely could do like the planning stuff ahead, like the talking planning part. I shouldn't have acted like that was like precluded from the flashbacks. It's certainly allowed. I just wouldn't pin any cost to it. I would consider that more free. But yes, precisely. So the flashbacks are purely for things that they could have done before the start of the score. And the whole point is so that you don't have to act all that stuff out ahead of time. Because that's the sort of stuff that is most of the time impossible to predict, but is more fun to pretend like you did predict it. And is like incredibly boring to try and like plan all that out ahead of time. I don't see there are always uses for flashbacks, but in this one, I think the more pertinent kind of Blades style is that I would pick up here in this like very stressful scene is a player does something that requires a roll, then I update the enemy. The player does something that requires a roll, I update the enemy. And that's like kind of the cadence that I would have here. And they can take any amount of implied time kind of between that. Yeah.
What are you doing?
I'm just going out.
Exit with the chain, the reddish chains in hand, and both of the boys exit with you. And as soon as they walk out of the portal and they see across the way Pit Fiend sitting with his arms crossed, they both, you hear like a breath escape their lungs as the fear hits them. And the Pit Fiend's arms go lax. You can see a bit of a smile on his face now, and it looks like its pensive frustration and waiting has been expended. And a voice says, "You will be paid."
All right. Let's try with this thing.
As he
Your
goes to
chains.
hand over the chains, right as he goes to reach for it.
People mind, okay.
He uses 5 strikes.
Alrighty, what's the DC on this?
He's gonna make an intelligence saving throw.
Correct. What's
Oh,
the
God.
struggle DC? 19.
Oh,
Okay.
God. That's one.
As it takes one step forward towards Scanlan, you, in the back of the alleyway, extend your finger and you watch as this slight shift of light kind of travels forward like a slight ripple, almost like a miniature breaking of the sound barrier, strikes across the air and seems to collide with the front of the Pit Fiend. As it hits, the energy dissipates, not affecting its form. You watch as the Pit Fiend suddenly, its attention.
He takes 46 psychic damage.
He does.
With stem.
I release.
All right, so he takes...
I'm so curious as to the likelihood of that working. I think it's a good idea, frankly, because they at this point the jig is kind of up. Wait, why am I looking up Feeble Mind? I need to look up Pit Fiend. Pit Fiend D&D. I'm sure it has LR. No, it doesn't have LR. Look at that. Look at that. Ooh, magic resistance. Okay, so that it's unfortunate. What's its int? Ooh, +6. +6, so the average of what it's rolling is 16 and a half. It only needed to get a 13. That's tough. That's tough. And it has advantage. So that the Pit Fiend is saving against that more often than it isn't because of the advantage. But that's tough. That's tough. Look at the senses. True sight, passive, perception 14. It's got telepathy. Yeah, the true sight 120. This is something interesting. I actually want to see. Your vision pierces through the following. Visual illusions. Visual illusions appear transparent to you. What does transparent mean? This is a question I would have as a player. Obviously, none of the players know that it has true sight, but if I found out and I was looking up true sight, I would legitimately have this question for my DM as a player, because I think this is up to interpretation. Birds run into windows, right? Like, birds can run into windows because they're so clear and so transparent. Does an entity with true sight know that the illusion is there? I think that is an open question based on this wording. Does an entity with true sight know that they are looking through an illusion, or does it just happen? They don't even know that there's an illusion there. You know? My brain assumes a translucence effect. Yeah, translucent, I think, would very much imply a level of knowledge that the illusion is there. I think it's very DM dependent, but that is an interesting facet of this, of does the Pit Fiend even know that they're trying to deceive him or not? Yeah. They have a see-through toil around them. I think that is a very fair interpretation of it. But yeah, it's interesting. Discern is also interesting because that makes it sound like they don't actually see it. They can actively discern it? Does that mean that if you have a body transformation that changes your face, a la a changeling or something like that, does the Pit Fiend just know that you are a changeling and thereby your basic form is a generic changeling form? Or does it know your exact facial features? Basically, can it see the baseline version of your face, or does it just know that you have a baseline version that is not the current face? I'd say lots of ambiguity there that I've never really looked at before. Pit Fiend fooled by Windows confirmed. I'm saying, dude. Because if it is the translucent interpretation, which I think is the more, like, reasonable, or the more natural interpretation, then wouldn't the Pit Fiend have been like kind of on them this whole time about like why are you in illusions? I don't know. That's an interesting aspect, but yeah, I think most people would work to a translucent. I think so too. So that's tough. I think that was still a decent idea, but he is succeeding on that more often than not. I think I'd rule that changelings can fool them. It's not an illusion, and the shapeshifting isn't really magic. Oh, did the transformation say magical transformation? Well, that is a whole discussion on what magical transformation. Oh, that has been transformed by magic. And so are changelings magical inherently, or is it a natural biologic process? That's like a lore implication right there. Yeah. I mean, that sounds very, very not setting dependent, but very DM dependent. I would also say biological. Based on the whole transform by magic, I think in my setting, I'd say that changelings would fool it. But that is an interesting delineation. Yeah. Interesting. Anyways.
From
He's
the
saying
direction.
from a dick.
So they're not too affected by the ability.
He's not affected by the ability?
I mean, he took damage, but the feeble mind did not seem to alter his.
Are there any MP free guards around?
Currently, you do not see any. However, let's go ahead and pick up this confrontation next week. It's 11 o'clock. It'll be your...
Hey, love that. He didn't say roll initiative. He said we're going to pick up this confrontation. Love that. Right, he didn't say roll initiative, right? He took damage, but the feeble mind did not seem to alter him. I love the ambiguity on are we going to go into combat or not? Because that means that there is still some role play that we're going to do at the beginning of next session. Even if he has us go into initiative, even if he's already pre-decided this is a fight, even if he's already pre-decided that, cutting it here before he even reacts to the feeble mind, beautiful. Beautiful place to end it. Love it. Because now we get plenty of role play at the beginning to kind of amp up the tension before we go into any sort of combat. Love that. Love that. Matt ends the session here. Normal post-session jokes. 4809 to 5006. There's at least the opportunity for the
Let's go ahead and pick up this confrontation.
for the players to force some RP, though they may not. And there's just an opportunity for Matt to ramp back up the tension before it's like, I swing my sword. You know what I'm saying?
Next week.
Yeah. And we just took too long.
Yeah, this got wonderfully bad.
I'm gonna forget by next week to stand on walking.
And it does give them the opportunity to potentially think of some creative solutions out of this, which is like that, leaving that option open, even if they don't take it.
The door and was holding and walked out just enough. They're right behind him, just emerged from the doorway, and he's about maybe 10 feet from
So
Scanlan,
not
15
adjacent.
feet to and also the arrangement for next week. I'll put some together for you guys so you know what we're going to start with next week. But yeah, we're going to jump in next Thursday into a mid-street City of Brass
Sextuplets.
battle.
Vex.
Here's the one thing I'm going to leave you with, because I think
no.
this is important.
Oh no.
As soon as you guys watch this kind of slight dissipation of arcane energy splash across the torso and head of the pit fiend, it kind of steps into its back foot. You all realize this is the Jenga moment. As you're preparing to go into battle, you watch as the pit fiend narrows its eyes, and then from immediately to its left, the small localized gateway tears open, and out from it you watch a humanoid female with large red feathered wings, carrying some sort of glowing lasso or rope at her side, armor, and a large weapon with a bow slung across her shoulder. Flies out next to the pit fiend. You reign.
Ah,
And that's what we'll pick up next week. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ashley, for coming and playing again.
Your letter.
Are we filming Thursday?
Oh.
I don't know.
I don't know what that is. I know what it is. Like I can picture the picture in my head, but I can't remember the name. Are they going to be able to beat those? I'll be honest. I think Matt got a little ahead of himself there. I get it. That's the sort of shit that I would do. But I know watching my own tape, I would be like, Mega, hold that back. Come on. Like that's a huge way to like amp up the tension right at the beginning. I guess there's something to be said for like their plans are going to be substantially different. But are they? Are they even? I don't know. Extra food for thought. Yeah, I think you're right, John. I think it's debatable. If I was watching, because that is absolutely 100% the sort of thing I would do. Is like after I call for end of session, have a little bit more that I want to say. The question is whether or not it would sway them. It might. Including it right at the very end, it might sway them and convince them to run away. Especially if Matt thinks that Jenga is not going to work out on the streets of Ank'Harel, then including that right at the end might sway their decision to run away throughout the week. So maybe it's worth it. That would definitely be part of the tape that it's very dependent on like how possible Matt thinks this is, how viable he thinks it is, what he is planning for the rest of the week. This is super dependent on what Matt is seeing behind the screen. If the goal is to make them more highly consider running away, I think it's solid. If the goal is just to drip feed a little bit more interest to the scene, I think hold it back. if it's just to put a little bit more interest into the scene, even if you think they're going to fight either way, I still think hold it back. Although then it comes into the actual play of it all. If you hold it back and then you introduce it at the top of the next session, it makes it seem like you've rebalanced the encounter between sessions, which the internet wouldn't like. Maybe it is a net. In the actual play perspective, it's probably net positive. I think it's really dependent on behind the screen stuff if I would do it at home. But it's so I get caught. The reason I'm really thinking about it is I get caught in this sort of thing all the time where I want to like add in this like one little extra thing before they go. And I oftentimes find myself watching the tape and being like, Mega, just hold back. Hold back. Hold back. You had a good, solid ending with solid intrigue. Hold back. I don't know. Can't stay long? Don't worry. I don't think we have long left. It would have been a great opening hook, but also a good bit of warning. Yeah. Would feel more out of left field and a little unfair. I don't know. And as soon as the combat is second, I mean, it does kind of solidify the... I didn't necessarily think that they were guaranteed going into combat, but maybe they are. Yeah. I think they might mean the internet of it all. The internet of it all. I generally don't remember if she's here, not next step. Yeah. If it's a fight they could legit lose, I'd err towards them letting them plan accurately. That is also fair. Yeah. It's definitely something I would think a lot about as a DM after the fact. I would be watching the tape. I would be really thinking about it hard. Because obviously I have my gut reaction, but you guys are swaying me. I'm still not sure, though. It's hard. It's hard to say. This is something I'm very uncertain on. Because I definitely know that I have a tendency, again, to want to put out more than I need to. So I'm very skeptical of those sort of ending moments of putting too much out. What challenge rating is a single Pit Fiend? 20. So they have a Pit Fiend. They have a Pit Fiend dead to rights. A Pit Fiend is going to be very little challenge for them. Or it's going to be like a simple challenge. You know, the combatant helps balance it. I think so. If the goal is to make the encounter more challenging, there definitely needs to be one other combatant. I think this is it's like a Lash Fiend or something. It's something like that. It's not a Pit Fiend. I would recognize it if I saw it. No, I'm not signed in. Spined Devil, maybe? Might be a Spined Devil. It might also just be a Succubus. Oh, I am missing the disclaimer. You're so right. There will be times when it's the right choice. Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely not inclusive. Oh, it's not an Ultraloth. God, I wonder if I just search D&D Fiend, is it one of the EEs? I'm already forgetting how he described it. I'm already starting to lose the memory. Ultimately, I think that the thing that he described is like a CR7, maybe a CR12 or 13. I don't think it's ultimately going to make the combat unwinnable for them, but it will definitely push it more towards challenging. But the question is also, how much are random bystanders going, like how much help did was the Pit Fiend going to have before? I don't know. We befriended a Pit Fiend named Pete. I like him ending before rolling initiative, because it still implies that there is a chance, at least, of them not doing combat. There's a chance. If they come up with a weird, wacky plan during the intervening weeks, that'll make them feel good as players. It'll make them feel clever, and also give some nice momentum to the beginning. So I like the ending no matter what. Even with the introduction of this secondary demon, I think it's totally fine. It'll all just, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Even if they can't purely avoid combat, there's possibly something they can do pre-combat that might help as well. Yeah. I mean, at the very least, I think that ending with roll initiative is like a big classic hook, like ending, like cliffhanger thing. But I do think it's very restrictive to any sort of fun plans that the players might come up with in the meantime. Even, again, I might see the timestamps from John and it's like heavy combat. But even with that, there is still a distinct possibility that they do some stuff before combat that maybe changes the situation or gives them an advantage. The fact that I know that we are not headed directly into combat gives some room for clever maneuvering before initiative is rolled, which you don't have if you roll initiative at the end. You just don't have room for that clever maneuvering, even on Matt's part. Like, I'm talking about it from the player perspective. On Matt's part, there's not room for clever maneuvering. Even if combat is inevitable here, there's a decent shot he might want to slightly change the arrangement of things or add in more environmental effects that he might want to describe before initiative is rolled. I think there's a lot of benefit towards leaving some room at the beginning that both the players and the DM can use to introduce new concepts or strategies before initiative gets rolled. Because once initiative gets rolled, you're so locked in. It'd be so uncool to be like, I know we rolled initiative at the end of last session, but can we like not be an initiative for a second? I won't say what the combatant type is, but we could tell you the CR now if you'd like, or we can just wait until, yeah, we'll wait until next stream. It doesn't matter that much. Interesting, there's a chance that Matt wouldn't have been able to have the combat reveal if he'd had them roll initiative. Yeah, also very true. It might have felt even more weird. And this is why I say, like, maybe holding that back, because over the week break in between, he might have thought about it more, and he might have put that as a mid-combat reveal. I've found that I'm more successful when I hedge away from that extra stuff at the end of sessions. Because it could have even been a situation where, say, 2 turns into the combat, Pit Fiend's not doing well, or even 1 turn, and he gets out a little brass bell, and he spends, like, an entire action to ring the bell, and Matt narrates, like, a rift opening, but it's not fully open. Maybe it takes a turn to open, or 2 turns to open, even. I think that could be a better way to introduce the second combatant as a mid-combat update. I do think it'd be very bad to just introduce it at the top outside of combat, but giving yourself as the DM some space to consider, like, what would be the most fun way to introduce this rather than, like, shoving it in at the end. And I think there is a real argument on either side. There's a real argument on either side, and I think the right answer lies behind the screen, unfortunately. I think that the right way to do it is so dependent on what is behind Matt's screen, and we just can't know, but it's tough. What if it was like the Kevdak fight where the single combat ended the ep and then the others rolled initiative for the next step? Oh, that you're already with like the Vox Machina fuck shit up. In that situation, this is why a lot of this stuff is very context dependent, which is why I love having Critical Role to analyze. I think Kevdak fight is one of the much more defendable rolling initiative at the end of the session. Because I think that it really depends on the likelihood that you can do anything clever. I would say give it like a 50-50 on the Kevdak. I think, yeah, even with the Kevdak fight, I think that there's not much of like a ending difference, like how good the ending is or how cool it is between Vox Machina fuck shit up and Vox Machina fuck shit up everybody roll initiative. I don't think that the everybody roll initiative has that substantial of an effect, and it locks them in. It locks a lot of their options down. Now, in that specific case, I say that it's more defendable because I think it's super unlikely that they would have chosen an avenue other than one that very quickly led them to initiative. So I think it's more defendable. But I still don't think that the rolling initiative in the Kevdak fight actually had like a benefit compared to not benefit. Whereas introducing this, I think that's like a lot of times my kind of thing is I think that not putting dice to table on like initiative at the end of the encounter, 90% of the time, it's going to be not rolling initiative is going to be better or at least equal to rolling initiative. Now, introducing the secondary combatant, I'm a lot more wibbly wobbly on that. I'm a lot more like that could go one of a dozen different ways. That is all very context dependent on like what I think Matt should or shouldn't do there. So it's super hard to say. But yeah, I think that's it. I think that is it. I will see you all on Wednesday. I really, especially while I'm doing all these collabs, I think other than like me and Paige gaming streams, I think it's unlikely that you'll see me for any other streams besides CR, which sucks. I really want to do some non-CR streams in between, but I'm spending more time like just doing admin and recording and all that stuff. So maybe and I think that that sort of stuff will start to sort of settle as March goes on. So I'm excited to get back to like streaming non-CR but non-Page gaming stuff. But I don't know when it'll come back. We'll have to see. For some reason, I keep forgetting it's Sunday. Me too. I kind of thought it would be, honestly. A lot of like, there's like no theorizing to do. I'm not really like worrying too much about the lore. Like I'm still paying attention to it, but I'm not like really like, firmly note taking. So I think that speeds it up a lot as well. But anywho, with all that, I'll see you guys on Wednesday for episode 76. John will talk about World Anvil in the DMs. Not a huge priority, for me. I'm probably gonna look into it, but I also have a lot of stuff to do Monday and Tuesday, so may or may not DM you. We'll see. But with that, see you later, everyone. Bye bye.